All right, so I'll hand you over to Jim.
Okay. Good evening. Thank you for coming. Kind of listen to him. I want to try to start off a little bit. I'm positive, I hope I'm positive everybody realizes how nice of an organization it actually is. It's come sit here, and last is the third night in a row with doing the TST stuff. I was thinking about today in a hotel room. I've been in 13 states so far this year and 2 provinces in Canada. So I'm in front of a lot of groups and stuff, and you can't believe how many times the shop owners or the techs have to somehow or another get something to happen, you know. So it's unbelievable how many times I see that way. This TST stuff is actually, if you don't realize how good it is, you know, the people that you brought in and everything else. A couple of things I want to talk about first. I want to try first, if you haven't taken it yet, take my contact information down. Jerry and I have talked about me doing this thing for I don't know how long. And my problem doing this, it's a good problem for you people, I think. I do this in either 6 hours or 8 hours. I've never done it in 3. So I had the biggest, probably my wife even said, I can't believe all the time you're putting into this thing. I said, it's probably the only time I have put a lot of time in pulling slides out and making sure it still had the meat in it. So I made a decision. That's why I want to make sure that if you take notice, I will not get to the end of the slides. Okay, purposely though. What I decided to do, I get to about slide 100 in a 3-hour time limit. But by the time I get there, you're going to have a pretty good idea of my thought process, and then you can go and look at the rest of them. And that's why I want you to take my contact information. If there's anything that you need better explanation on, or you want to know exactly what it's about. So far, the last 2 days, I've answered somewhere in there about 21 or 22 questions from the other TST chapters and stuff on the things I said or the other slides. I'm more than happy to do that. Okay? I don't know. I want to get into this and start going pretty fast on the thing. I want to get rid of this stuff. The reason why I ever do this stuff, what I mean by this stuff, is to give you an idea. Anybody attend the TST big event last year? Not the one just I did with Doc Neal, which was a trip, doing anything with him, you know. Everybody saw his joint in the ashtray, you know, on his thing and stuff, you know, and that's him. If you didn't know, a little behind the scenes thing with that, by the way, I was supposed to be the first one out that day, and Doc asked me if he could go first. And if you don't know why, because he had a plane at 12 o'clock, he had to go to Saudi Arabia or something, you know, but he wants to talk about travel, and he does travel and stuff. I have a pretty unique life, I guess you want to say. I want you people to kind of have half an idea that I don't just read a book about this. I'm the world's worst instructor, self-proclaimed. All right. And what I mean by that is I was a former shop owner, 23 years, 3 shops at one time, 47 employees. That's the reason why I have no hair. Well, I had hair longer than yours actually at one point, so I had shops and stuff and 47 employees, you know, and it just all fell out and stuff. And what happened is I made a decision to leave my businesses and sell my businesses and go mobile. So somebody's asked me, do you own John and Nell? I knew John and Nell when I worked in a dealership. So, you know, we talked a lot about when he first started and stuff. The difference between what John does and what I did, my Matt's company, is I follow up behind factory troubleshooters. That was my job when I was doing the mobile diagnostics. Now, it's very important. I tell you that for a reason. It's not an ego thing or whatever. I hear way too much stuff out there about you need factory scan tools. You need factory scan tools. You can't fix a car without factory scan tools. I followed up behind factory troubleshooters. And you don't think that they had factory scan tools? So the scan tool isn't going to fix anything. And that's really what this is all about. What happened was in 2007, I really stopped doing all the mobile diagnostics. I had some heart issues, and I had to go to the Mayo Clinic and get straightened out. And basically what they told me, you can't be going 18, 19, 20 hours a day. So basically what I did, I cut out the mobile diagnostics. I was going to do it anyway. I needed an excuse. And the reason why I was going to do it anyway was a good reason. Because I was getting very hard to get paid. Because I go in there in 10 minutes, I got it nailed, and then I got a 3-hour fee. Well, you're not going to charge us for that, are you? So what do you want me to do? You want me to kick the tires for an hour? You want to feel better? So bottom line is that that's a good problem to have, though. And I made a decision, as dumb as it might sound to you, I made a decision that I'm going to go out and start trying to teach other people how I handled it and stuff. Everybody in front of me right now, tomorrow morning, if you're the boss, you're the tech, has 5 cars out on the lot, and one of them is a drivability problem. You know, the other stuff is like brake jobs or water pumps and all that stuff. The way this industry is, I've been in it my whole life. The way this industry is, our mindset is that we're going to go make money on the other stuff, and then we're going to go and try to figure out that drivability thing on electrical. I think anyway, we enter it with the wrong idea. We enter with the idea that it's not going to be profitable. We just have to do it because we will need the other work that the customer is going to give us. And I included, that's what I thought. I went to my accountant went to all 3 of my places, and he comes to my place one time, my shop that I was at, and I said to him, look, I want you to do something. I want you to walk in sometime, and I want you to do this. And he goes, what is that? I said, I want you to come in and tell me when I don't have to be in my business anymore. I got a manager here, a manager here. When can I actually not worry about me being the daily person? You know, I've done this my whole life. Since I was 13 years old, I worked on cars. My father's gas station. And he said, all right. About 2 years later, he walked in, and he went like this. And I said, what the hell's that? And he goes, you told me to do it. I said, oh, I forgot all about that, you know. And here's very important about what this seminar is about. At that point, he said, the business doesn't need you anymore. You can go do whatever you want to do. You want to go fishing, whatever you want to do. I said, well, what I really want to do, I love electrical, diagnostics, troubleshooting, and I love drivability. But I had that mindset, we're not really going to make money on it, but I like doing it. So what I did is, I started a new business within my business. I took one bay, and I became the troubleshooting guy. And I, had some jobs. I had enough jobs. I could keep me busy a little bit. Then what happened was other shops started sending me jobs. And then before long, some of the dealerships started sending jobs. And I really didn't want to be that busy, to be honest with you. I want that little hobby and I got busier and busier and busier. And then what happened was I went to my other 2 guys who were very, very good guys, and I said, how would you guys like to stop all that other stuff and just do this? And I said, that'd be pretty cool. I said, how are we going to get paid? I said, I haven't figured that out yet. I said, but, you're interested in doing that? I said, yeah. So here's what I did. I wrote a letter to all my customers. And I said, 5.5 miles this way, 6 miles this way is the other shops. We want to ban it you. Right? You can take your car to either one of the other places. If you feel it's too far or an inconvenience, then drop it off here. We'll shuttle your car down to one of the other 2 places. I didn't lose one customer. I started that shop on a Monday morning after having it for about 13 years at that point. I started on a Monday morning as a full-blown electrical diagnostic shop, drivability electrical diagnostic shop. And my wife reminds me about this every day. I ran out of work at about 10 o'clock in the morning. And she said, way to go, Einstein. We used to be busier than hell, now look at this. And I said, give me a chance, give me a chance. And that's what this is about. What I developed was, I'm glad it wasn't busy, to be honest with you. It scared me at first, but I'm glad it wasn't busy. Once we found out what was wrong with those cars, we didn't call the customer up and tell them, okay, the car is fixed or anything like that. Now, we didn't call the shop up and tell them what's wrong with it. We just basically looked at all different angles. We know what's wrong with it. Take advantage of it now and look at it from different angles. And what we started to do, we started a procedure, I want to say. We started a full-blown, actual procedure how to approach these problems. And then what happened, about 3 months, we started having pretty much of a full day. And then in 6 months, we were into a couple days wait. By the time I sold that shop, now I want everybody to think about the worst drivability problem you've ever had in your life. 22 to 28 per day, every day with a 2.5-week wait when I sold that shop. And 3 people and myself. And then after I sold that, it's not running like exactly the way it was, but it's still a nice business and stuff now. But what happened was, after I backed out of the thing, I started jotting down notes like what we did actually. How did we do it? And that's what this is about. 2 things I want you to walk away here tonight with. I want you to walk away with a thing called the P's and the G's and the 85-15%. By far, the 2 most important things. And the reason why you need to do that, you're probably not going to do what I just said. You're probably not going to shut your business down, become a full-blown diagnostic. I was just talking to a couple people before we started. It's really tough to do a hardcore drivability when you're only doing it twice a month or so. But very simply is that if you have an approach, if you have a procedure, it actually really falls into place. And people say to me all the time, man, you must have really seen some neat exotic problems and stuff. And here's my answer to that every time. And a magazine's going to, next month, I think an article comes out in a magazine, interview me about this. And my response is always the same. 7 out of 10 times, anybody could have fixed the car that I was looking at if they hadn't overshot the problem. Basics. You know, how important the inputs to the computer. If you think about it, damn near every drivability problem you've ever had, the customer come in and complain about. What did he complain about? He complained about an output, if you really think about it. So he's feeling something wrong. It's an output. We're not, somehow or another, we just don't, our mindset, we don't go and look at the inputs. There's some simple things that are going to help you tremendously. One is never drive or walk a scan tool or drive a scan tool, drive the car to a scan tool, walk a scanner to the car. It sounds pretty stupid, but you would be floored how fast you lose valuable information. Even if you want to do it real fast, you can drive a car in and stuff. That car is there because it's a cold drivability problem or something. You ruin it by starting it up. Walk that scan tool out to the car. And now the fact that almost every scan tool today with the graphing capabilities, you know, coolant temperature sensor and air temperature sensor. Now you put them on a graph, you want to see one line. You don't want to see 2 lines. And it can be, believe me, it can be that simple. All right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you an approach. The P's and the G's. The reason why I want this up here, the reason I want to start off with this one, and see, this is my company here. And if everybody remembers a guy by the name of Joe Woods, who was from the area also, right? Joe Woods rode me for 3 days in my mobile diagnostic business. And after 3 days, he wrote an article. And in the article, he said it was like watching Sherlock Holmes with a wrench, putting the clues together. I said, I like that, man. So that's how the logo came about, and that's how the name came about and stuff. But what I did is, when I'm going full-blown my diagnostics, a post-secondary school called me up and said, is there any way you can fill in for 4 weeks? We have an instructor that walked out. And I said no about 13 times. And then I got off the phone, if anybody's married or a significant other. You know what happened after I said no for the 13th time? My wife said, you hypocrite. All you do is bitch and complain. Nobody teaches right. So give the guy 4 weeks, for God's sake. You know, I'll move your schedule around. That was 17 years ago. I'm still at that school. And the funny part, I don't teach any ASC course. I teach a course they call Advanced Engine Performance. And my official name of that course is Making Shit Happen. And usually what I do, when I walk in, the students are completely done, every category. And they walk in, and I usually have on the board what I got hit with yesterday. I still get tons and tons of emails and files from people with drivability problems. And they can never say to me, am I going to get hit with that? So ironically, one of the articles is coming out pretty soon. The name of the article is going to be called Mr. Morton / Jim Morton. Because during the day, I'm Mr. Morton, and about 2:30 in the afternoon, I become Jim Morton, and that's when Maths kicks in and stuff, and I go someplace and do classes. And the funny part about it, I can't tell you how many times that somebody comes up to me at the end of an evening class, says, man, oh man, I would like to spend 8 weeks in that school and listen to you for 8 weeks. That's pretty funny, because that student wants to be where you are. Yeah. You want to be where he is, and he wants to be where you are. And that's the way it is. So I get to see both ends of the spectrum and stuff. And take this for what it's worth. My students, those students in that school get picked up immediately coming out of school because of simple things that I'm going to show you tonight. They hit the ground running. I can't tell you how many times a shop owner in the Philadelphia area will tell me, he said, man, you really screwed my shop up. I said, why is that? None of my guys, my full-time guys, want to touch any drivability because so-and-so's coming in, he'll be here by 2 o'clock and just give it to him and stuff. And what it is, I'm just getting them to develop a pattern, a procedure, okay? So all the stuff here, just as I said, it's the things I said, right? Very simple is that I do both ends of the spectrum. The number one thing is that I can't emphasize enough. Anybody ever sit on a Tom McKenna senior class? And he's been dead for 20 years, so if you say we sat in his class 7 years ago, no you didn't. Okay, he died in 1993. And the end result is that he taught all over the place and stuff. And he was my mentor. I tried around for 25 years with him. And the reason why I'm emphasizing that too, because he told me all the time. He got me a job with Sun Scope. So if you haven't bought a Sun Scope 1 million years ago, you got either him or me for 3 to 5 days. And for number one thing, he made me tell everybody That thing's not going to fix anything. That thing the guy just wrote a check for $85,000 for or something, it's not going to fix anything. And the first thing he showed me, he said, make sure you ask for the invoice when you see one. I said, Tom, if they have it, they get paid for it. He said, ask for the invoice. I said, what am I going to do with the invoice? He said, go over to the machine with the owner and say, when this thing breaks down, don't say yes, say when it breaks down, take the invoice and hold it back by the tailpipe. And what happens is if the paper goes out and stays out, then all the cylinders are hitting. But the paper goes back, then you got a misfire. And I said, oh, good, yeah. The guy spent $85,000 for a piece of equipment, and I'm going to tell him to use his invoice, his thing. And my point is that's what I'm trying to tell you there, that your brain is the best damn piece of equipment there is. Like I said, I followed up literally year after year for almost 17 years, following up behind the factory troubleshooters. When Tom died in 1993, that's what Tom did. And when he died, they didn't know what to do, so meanwhile they said, well, you just fill in for a little while. So for 17 years, I filled in behind the factory troubleshooters. And so many times it was something so simple. He just missed it. And that's what we're going to kind of go over, okay? If you're looking for that high-tech stuff that John and Ella talks about and stuff, it ain't going to happen. We're going to see this simple stuff first, okay? Now, probably the most common email I've got so far this week from the other two TST things is, this is just a short part of this thing about interviewing. If anybody brought their car to that diagnostic shop, they were told when they made an appointment, it was a shop owner or the owner of the car or whatever, when you drop it off, expect to spend about 15, 20 minutes with us. If you just drop it off, you got somebody out there waiting to pick you up, take the car and bring it back someday, you have more time. And I don't want the most convenient person to drop it off either. I need the person who drives the car. If not, what's going to happen, I'm going to be just like every other shop that you've headed to so far. You'd be absolutely floored how much information that driver has. Right, and you got to learn how to pull it out of them. The most common thing I've been asked so far this week, and also in the other place I've been doing this, and KC Vision wants me to do it next year, is just a whole class on just the interviewing techniques. So what I do tell you is that customer really does have a lot of information. And it's like playing, like I said, it's like playing Sherlock Holmes or wrench. I want to show you something here on an interview sheet. If anybody wants this sheet, I'll send it to you in a Word format. Okay, it's originally my sheet. Now a publisher has it. I still own it, and I have this in a Word format. Okay, the reason why I want it in like a PDF, but I got a Word format. I like to send it to you in a Word format if you want it. That way you can change it however you want. Okay, and my point is that I don't have to turn around. I can read the whole thing to you, right? Not even looking at the thing because I interviewed so many people. And you say, well, I don't have time for all that crap. That's what this is about. My suggestion to the shop owners in this room right now, this whole thing tonight is about you, and it's also about your techs becoming one. What I mean by that is that you have to be together on this thing, and the techs have to be together. They can't be fighting each other and all that. This has to become almost like a new business. I've got so many people started up. Like when I had my garage, two of my garages had gas in it. Okay, my gas was a separate business. It was in the same property. I had a petroleum account. People that worked for my gas, they worked for the gas part. They didn't work on separate businesses. If I would have owned a tow truck, which I never wanted a tow truck, if I would have owned a tow truck, that would have been a separate business, okay? I've got a lot of people now, especially in the Philadelphia area now, they have a separate business within their business. They have a diagnostic business. What's the biggest thing about this diagnostic stuff? Trying to charge for it. You know, it's hard when you bet X amount per hour and then you go do the diagnosis, you're different. Well, you know who gets beat up here more than anybody? The person that's probably here tonight that puts the time in and learns all this stuff. Somebody's over there doing a brake job or a water pump making money, and a diagnostic guy, we're very hard to charge for this stuff. Let me tell you a fact. I'm not saying I heard. This is the way it worked in my business. You walked in, you were told immediately 2 hours, you have to get authorization for 2 hours labor. When I first started doing strictly just the diagnostics, every shop around me was 32 to 35 hours an hour. We were 85, all right, and you had to give authorization for 2 hours labor. And I had cars coming in all over the place, a wait, 2.5 week wait. They knew they were going to pay. People say, man, you guys got a hell of a damn reputation. I said, what's my reputation? Good and expensive. I said, well, that's a hell of a lot better than bad and cheap, right? Well, now, I never called this, but the whole Philadelphia area, the name of my shop was the last resort. All right? Bottom line is that if all else fails, they get up to that shop, they'll find out what's wrong with it. But this is what we did every day. We walked in the morning, put the coffee pots on, got our lab scopes out. This is all we did. But I've got some other shops that are dedicated to this now. They have a separate business within the business. That one guy, he can get paid. And we thought, how much can I possibly pay somebody all that money if he does all that stuff? Here's my response to that every time. I need another guy. You know what I can afford to pay him? I'm going to afford to pay him. Stop right there. You never want to say this. How much can I afford to pay him? Isn't a tech supposed to make his own money? Yep. Okay? If you're charging right for it, I was paying when I sold that in 1995. I sold that one business in 1995. 3 guys were in 6 figures, and I wasn't looking for the money. We were charging a lot of money, and they were getting 40% of the labor. And my point there is that some of you can't, I would have never done it. I'll tell you right now, your face. I would have never done it. It got to the point where I was allowed to do what I wanted to do. I'll tell everybody right now, if I would have known what would have happened, I'd have done it 10 years earlier. So I'm encouraging people. I'm seeing you got to get real serious about it. See this diagnostic sheet? 8 to 5, we work 5 days a week, except for Fridays. Friday we start at 9:30. You didn't wake up an hour and a half later. You met me at a restaurant at 8 o'clock on Friday mornings. Right? And we sat down as a group because we were too busy to even talk during the day. And an hour and a half on Friday mornings, what we talked about was 2 things. One is I said, remember on Tuesday that car you had was really odd, the first time we ever seen that kind of thing? Tell everybody else what you saw. Now, this guy's going to explain what I call a different 15%. And then when we got out of the way, now we understand how so-and-so, instead of grounding something, they're powering something. Instead of just putting it on, they're pulse width modulating it, okay? Now we got that out of the way, and the next part of what we're going to do now is this interview sheet. Here's my question, everybody. Is there anything on that interview sheet that I'm asking that isn't helping whatsoever? Question 2. Would you like to have something else on that interview sheet? I never want it to be two papers. I want 1 paper. All right? And the end result is sometimes we knock stuff off, sometimes we put stuff back on. This particular one here, the newest thing was put on this one is right down the bottom, gasoline used. I don't really care about the brand. I care about the octane rate and all the thing. And you know what most common answer was? The good shit. And I said, where's that? I've never seen that advertised. Where's this at? The good shit at? And you know what happens. The car's running bad. Everybody in the neighborhood is telling the guy, you know what you need to do? You can put high test in there and clean it out. In this room, we all know that low octane fuel will light off too easy. That's why you get the marbles in it. It lights off like a diesel, right? We'll go the other way with high octane fuel. You put a fuel in there, you're not cleaning it out. What you're actually doing, you're holding back the combustion. How long do you want to hold back the combustion before that exhaust valve opens up? So actually, they had one problem, and they would start creating another problem. And then I would say to them, your car should only get 87 octane. You're putting 91 in it. Yeah, I tried 87, won't run right. Okay, let's go find the problem then. You notice I said that? I didn't say, is there a problem? There is a problem. If you're going to put higher octane in a car to make it run better, there is a problem. What's the most common thing? Carbon. Carbon buildup is raising the compression, isn't it? If everybody think about this, take 10,000 off a set of cylinder heads. What's going to happen to the temperature and the compression? It's going to go up, right? Well, don't take 10,000 off. Put 10,000 with a carbon in it. It's going to do the same identical thing. And I got a procedure here to show you all this stuff, right? You got to this is something you have to, as a team, you got to talk about this, and you got to learn how to talk to people. I have sat in dealerships and mainly. I sat in dealerships and listened to that service writer and the service manager talk to people, and then I have to report back to manufacturer. And that's why people say to me all the time, what do you do for a living? I said, I'm a professional liar. If I told them what I saw, somebody's head's going to roll half the time. You know what the most common thing is? My car now doesn't run right. Okay, we'll take care of that. Okay, but let me tell you about our shock special, though. And I said, what happened? Immediately, you forgot why the customer even bring the car there. All right, you're worried about your specials and stuff. Do the other way. Take care of why the customer's there. and then you're going to find other things. I just had a real long conversation with Tony Moore from ASE, the vice president. I said, you know what's wrong with all your tests? I'm certified in damn everything. You know what's wrong with ASE testing? There's always something wrong with the car, right? Well, in the real world, there's usually 7 things wrong with the car. All right? So you got to learn that. You got to know that what is actually causing that customer's complaint. That's an important part of that interview. How many times I bet it's happened to everybody in this room? Guy comes in, he says, you got a noise. You drive it down the road. There's that noise right there. You take care of that. The guy picks it up. He says, oh, what are you doing, man? The noise is still there. Oh, you're talking about that noise. Oh, I thought you were talking about this other noise and stuff, right? You know it, right? You got to talk to the customer, man. It's a waste of time if you're not doing that, okay? This is a really, really important one right here. I've debated this with a lot of manufacturers. The first thing is always describe the problem. I don't want that. Describe the problem / concern, especially today's cars. Man, there are so many things going on in today's cars. The customer never had that before. It might just be the way the electronic dash lights up or something like that. Well, my other car didn't do that. Remember, all night tonight, you can't fix anything that's not broken. And a lot of things, I get called a lot of times, well, you know, there's something wrong with this car. Well, who says there's something wrong with it? You know, it doesn't do what you think it should do. It doesn't mean it's broken. All right? So is it a problem or is it a concern? And I'm telling you right now, there's a lot of things out there that are just that, they're concerns. All right? And I'll show you some of that stuff tonight. How long has the problem been there? Okay? You know, I can't tell how many times. You know, last week. When happened last week? Like Tuesday was the first time I did. Okay, what happened on Monday? And you know how many times? You know, I'm done already now. What happened on Monday? You know, maybe they got a water pump put on. I don't know about you, but I've taken plenty of water pump brackets off of cars that had ground wires on them. You know, maybe the ground wasn't put back on correctly or something. Okay? Very important. Ask these questions. I mean, how many people say all the time, you know, okay, I hear you, but you know, who's going to pay me for this crap though, man? You know, I'm going to talk to the customer, right? Who's going to pay me for that? And I'm going to take it out on road test. Who's going to pay me for that? Remember I said I get upfront charge of 2 hours labor. I was being paid for that interview. I was being paid for that road test. I got documented that about 92% of the time, we nailed that problem, that 2-hour limit. That's including the interview. That's including the road test. All right? So the bottom line, people say, what do you guarantee me for that 2 hours labor? My best shot. Never, ever, ever guarantee anybody anything that you know you can't guarantee. And I said to them all the time, I'm going to give you my best shot. And once you do it long enough, the second part of that was my best shot at 92% of the time, we nail in that time frame. And by the way, for the business guys here, for the owners, the reason why I never wanted the 2 sheets, on the back of this interview sheet, there was 3 blocks back there. Top block said, you authorize 2 hours labor at blah, 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 pound per hour. Second one said, I authorize 2 hours labor, plus, it was open there, you fill in a dollar amount. Up to a certain dollar amount, you authorize me to spend. The third one was some of this comment was checked off. Basically what it said in layman's terms, I've been all over the damn place, fix the damn car. I need the car. That's not the professional way it read it, but that's really what it meant. And somewhere it's about 88% of everybody checked off that one. I said, well, you want me to give you a call? No, I'm tired, but you got invoices like this, for God's sake. That's why, again, I talked to John years ago about this. I said something about, he said to me how expensive I was. And I said, well, John, you know, you want to find out how good you are, man, raise your price. And he goes, what the hell has that got to do with anything? It was $99 at the time, and he didn't charge you if he didn't tell you what was wrong with it, right? I said, John, how many people you think looked at that car before you? If I had a shop up in this area, I'd just call them in all the time and say, I'm not going to do anything. $99, you know, tell me what's wrong with it, right? My fee was a hell of a lot higher. Now, the factory troubleshooters, you know, 19 people looked at it before I got out there. You know what I usually had to do? I had to undo what 18 people did. And then get back to the original damn thing, like loose ground wire or something, you know? So, you know, I'm telling you, everybody, if you plan on being in business the next 5 to 10 years, this is not going to be an option, what I'm telling you. You're not going to be able to stay in business. Why? You're going to make money on the other stuff, but it's going to be so offset by what you're losing on the diagnostics and electrical. You know, think about it. You know, I'm a pretty common sense person. I started in this industry a long time ago. My father was the Ford flathead V8 expert in town. So it was 6-volt batteries and an AM radio with the electrical system. I remember the day I remember a high-tech day at his shop. A car came in with valve covers. You know, I said, man, this is this is unbelievable shit here, right? Well, the bottom line is that you had you had about 1/10 the amount of electronics that you have now, and you had about 10 times more metal. And Craig, we were talking earlier about grounds. You know, a big thing today is you got so little amount of metal in the damn car, and even the metal you do have, they called it, years ago we would have called it junk metal, but now it's called dissimilar metal. Right? Dissimilar metal means that we used to sweep it up and throw it out, but now we form it out, we make a form out of it, we make a frame out of it. And you know what it really comes down to, and this is why it's so important, all these Dateline, 2020, 60 minutes, and all that, right? The safety crash tests. That's where all this problem really started. That's when my business took off, because you want to save that person. How are you going to save the person? The area that they're in is called the cage. You keep everything nice in the cage. Well, guess what you have to do then? You have to let everything else around it collapse. The firewalls today on the cars today, when I say today, the last 12 to 15 years, are basically meant to collapse on impact. And when they collapse, what it does, it causes the engine and trans stuff to go under the vehicle. Okay? 37% of my income last year in my mobile diagnostic business came from body shop of the dealerships. The car looks beautiful after the accident, but you can't deliver it. They put their foot on the brake and the rear wipers go on. And what it comes down to is very simple. You don't have good metal. And another thing I saw is that the guy's been welding back them firewalls for years. He's good at it, man. It's solid. But the material he's using now, because it's such little metal, the material is causing high resistance. I'm going to show you on this PowerPoint program how to check the entire ground integrity of the vehicle, literally in minutes. All right? This is all about the P's and the G's. G is a general test. Remember this now for the rest of the night. G is a general test. Why do you have a general test? To find the right area of the problem. Okay? Once you find the right area of the problem, then you do pinpoint tests. What you're going to see, very simply, is that I call it the funnel. The funnel effect, a funnel is very big up top, right? You got a car doing this and this and this. Okay, I'll give you an example. Car cranks and won't start. Okay? You have to do something. You have to do a test. So what we'll do is we'll take a can of propane, and we'll bleed propane in the vehicle, hit the key, and it starts up. That's a fantastic G test. You're in the right funnel now. It's a fuel delivery problem. If I started over here with this guy right here and say, give me what you think it could be, right, he's going to say something. And I could probably go around the room and don't repeat what somebody else said. We probably got that many things it could be, right? Well, a funnel's very big up top. So what are you going to do next? Number one, you're never going to come out of that funnel. You're going to try to drive down the funnel. Your next test, you kind of eliminate, don't ever try to go and find out what's wrong with the car. Try to find out what's okay. When you find out what's okay, you know what you probably just did? You probably just eliminated 12 or 13 things on that list. Right? I think we've been trained reverse. We test this to see if it's a bad thing. Test something and see if it's a good thing. So what I do now, I put the propane and it starts up. Okay, what I have to do now, I'm not coming out of the funnel, but I'm going to drive down the funnel. I'm paid a lot of times. Well, let me rephrase that. My wife is paid a lot of times. She gives me a couple bucks when I do this shit. I go to dealerships sometimes, and what they want to know, how come the shop is not very productive? And all I do is write down a piece of paper, basically, each bay number. And anybody's doing electrical or drivability, basically I put a P and a G on the paper, and I look at what he's doing, and I think that's a G test, or it's a pinpoint test. And you know what that paper usually looks like by the end of the day? G, G, P, P, G, G, P. What's happening is coming in and out of the funnels. He looks like he's busy. See, that's the key thing. I want everybody to understand this thing. Well, my guys, man, I can't ask them to work harder, man. They're exhausted. It's very exhausting going in and out of funnels. It's extremely exhausting, all right? You're not making any money, though. You got to somehow get it down into the right area and stay there, okay? I'll prove it now. This is something I really wanted to keep this out, but I can't. I do a whole class on just the electrical part. And, you know, we don't want that. Well, let's just sit there after work all day and go through Ohm's law and all that shit. But the reason why I did this, people ask me all the time, that shop you had, was it ever any time any busier than any other time? Yeah, about eight weeks after Christmas. When everybody starts putting a crap on their car, they got a Christmas time. Now, that's a parallel circuit on the board right now. I am not going to teach you all about Ohm's law, but I'm going to tell you right now, if you don't become a master of Ohm's law in the next couple of years, I'm very serious about this. We don't need any more people leaving the industry. Really consider leaving the industry unless you really learn Ohm's law. I'm telling you, I am not an electrical expert, with this stuff. I had to learn this, and really, what a lightning bolt went through my head on this crap, man. I said, wow, I don't know how that car failed now. Now I know why I did this. Let me show you something that's pretty basic. If you sit there with a mathematician, you're going to be sitting ready to barf in 5 minutes, all the things he's going to tell you to do. It's a hell of a lot easier for an automobile mechanic than that actually looks. And first of all, you know what the problem is? Everybody's pulled a wiring diagram. You got that wiring diagram right there. Real quick, when I looked at that, I saw 5 of these on that wiring diagram. But they didn't look like this, though. All right? So what this is, a real simple thing. This diagram is saying 12 volts here. So there's 12s right here. That means it's coming up. There's 12 volts there, 12 volts there, and 12 volts there. Everybody does one to find a common denominator, 1 divided by rule. If you got a hobby, do that crap. All right? It's a simple way to do this. Add up the resistors, right? This resistor here, these two resistors are 4 ohms, right? 1 and 2. Put the total here, 8 ohms total. And put that 12 volts right here. This into this gives me the current. And here's what's wrong is why I'm showing this thing. I can't tell you how many automatic transmission problems I see with something like this. Unlike what usually happens in a mathematician with a parallel circuit, when we work on cars, our parallel circuits usually don't have everything working at the same time. And I'll prove it to you. What happens a lot of times, this first branch right here, that might be SS1 in the transmission, shift salient number 1. The second one might be shift salient number 2. And the third one will be torque converter clutch solenoid. Now, I'm not asking you to be a transmission expert, but I see way too many transmission problems that people think is a drivability problem, and way too many drivability problems that are actually transmission problems. So when I said find out if something's okay or not, and if it's okay, get out of it. Don't waste any more time on it, okay? I'm going to describe this here real fast, and I'm going to tell you how this turned into an actual drivability problem. If anybody's heard, a 4-speed automatic transmission was the most common out there. They got either called a second or third gear default. Everybody know that? How could you tell if that's a second or third gear default? Anybody know? Whatever gear, both shift solenoids are in the off position. Because default, if you lost power or ground, the solenoid can't work, right? So either second or third gear, you don't need either one of the solenoids. So if a fuse blew or something like that, you got a second or third gear default. Okay, let's go to second gear default right now. Okay, shift solenoid number 1, shift solenoid number 2 are both off. 2, second gear 2 is an even number, right? What I'm going to tell you right now is no federal law, but almost every of them do this way. The other even number is gear number 4, right? Both of them will be on then. If it's a third gear default, both of them will be off in third, and the other odd number is 1. They will both be on in 1. So this particular car I'm going to tell you about right now is a second gear default. Both shift solenoids are off in second gear. They're both on in fourth gear. A lot of manufacturers don't use second gear defaults. Why? Because what's going to happen now, you're in fourth gear, you're driving down the road, the torque converter clutch is going to lock up now, right? Now what just happened? I got all 3 branches are on now. Very rarely do you ever have that. And here's why that's really important. Because when you go through the math, what you're going to find out, when you add these up, 8 ohms RT and the 12 volts is 1.5 amps. Again, 1.5 amps. This one here is 4 ohms. 4 and the 12 is 3 amps. This is the real important part about this. All these totals here, add them up, and that's what's here and here. So there's plenty of people. I've been in all these expos, training expos, and people sitting there and saying, it makes no difference on a parallel circuit because no matter what goes wrong, that branch is still going to do the same thing. I agree with that. But listen to me though. And I don't like talking about water and electricity at the same breath. But think about it like a water manifold. If you put 30 gallons of water in here, doesn't it make sense that probably 30 gallons are going to come out here? So whatever current is going in the circuit is all going to come out. We drop voltage, but the current's there. Now, I don't know about you. Does anybody know any cars out there with plastic or rubber electrical connectors? I don't. All the ones I work on, I got metal connectors, right? What's a natural thing that happens with metal when it heats up? Expands. Now, everybody in this room, I guarantee you, you've all heard this crap. My car is really weird. About 15, 17, 21 minutes of driving, then it starts to, well, guess what? A bipocket current flow is heat. And what's happening is the connectors now start to open up. When they start to open up, it's resistance. Now when the car dies or the person turns it off and he gets out and kicks the tires for 5 minutes, all right, and then it's okay again, all right? Well, it's not because he's kicking the tires, because when current's no longer flowing through the circuit, what's a natural thing happens to metal? When it cools off, it contracts again. So what was happening on this particular transmission, it was a second year of the fault, so the only time all three were working when the car was cruising down the road. This car was brought to me as a kind of a weird thing. They said, it never happens on the wife, it only happens on the husband. So what's the first thing I'm going to check then? The damn husband solenoid. You know, that was okay, and that wasn't a husband solenoid. Now what you do in that interview, how do you drive it, how do you drive it? Is it the way they drive it, or is it the type of drive it? It turns out that what had happened here is the wife worked about 2.7 miles from home, and there's like 7 traffic lights between point A and point B. When the husband drove the vehicle, he was on the turnpike for 44 miles each direction. Right, the type of driving. Right? It had nothing to do with the husband or the wife driving, it's the type of driving. Right? And the end result was what was actually wrong with it is the third thing over, the torque converter clutch solenoid, right, was partially shorted. So if this is lower resistance, you can see this one here is lower than this. This is 8 and this is 4. See the more current there? So what happened is that the amount of current coming over here, and it happens a lot of times with these people adding things to cars, like right here. Somebody added a Christmas gift. All they need is they need to find power and ground, right? That's all they need, right? There they just found power and ground. Everybody see what I just did with that circuit? Now look at the circuit now. What happened, I just put a 4 ohms resistance on this gift, whatever it is, and now this is still the same, this is still the same, this is still the same, but now you add in 3 more amps, it went to 9 amps there. There's the damn problem. Now if the wife drove this car, it'd probably be okay because you're not kicking into the torque converter and like that. So parallel circuit, it's not believing. Nobody in this room resists stuff more than me. I didn't want to even think about touching this stuff. You know, I didn't grow up with computers, and I'm not an electrical expert. But I found out a long time ago that I was fixing cars in spite of myself. Once I really started seeing how circuits operated, all right, I said that there's 2 things I would like to someday come back and do. One, I would like to do a really good Ohm's law class, not a brain dead Ohm's law class that I've sat in millions of times. Like how, you know what I see way too many times? Everybody tries to jam electrical theory down our throats, but they don't show us why. I just showed you why you need to know. How does it relate to a car? You know, and that's when it becomes a little interesting. And the second thing I'll do is that interview and really learn how to interview and stuff also. Okay? I just want to show you some of the things I need to go and check out when a customer car comes into my shop. And here's what I was talking about is that, you know, the newer problems out there now. I'm starting to see this stuff a lot now. Adaptive memory. Adaptive memory is awesome. All right. I want everybody to do me a favor. You got 2 more days left in the week here. Get a relatively new car, like 10 years or old, 10 years or newer, all right, in the last 10-year model year. Put a scan tool on the vehicle and look at the coolant temperature sensor. Preferably warm it up, all right? And then look at the coolant temperature sensor on the scan tool. Most scan tools are going to show you the temperature and they're going to show you the voltage, right? I want you to disconnect the coolant temperature sensor. Now, you can disconnect it, it's okay. Don't plug it back in when it's running though, but disconnect it. And look at your scan tool. You're going to say, holy Christ, I would have never thought that. More than likely, the temperature is not going to change. It's going to see the exact same temperature. All right? Years ago, what had happened? It went to like negative 40, right? It doesn't do it anymore. Adaptive memory. It remembers what normal is. But here's the kicker, and here's a really good diagnostic tip for everybody. The voltage, they're not allowed to put a substitute in the voltage. So when you unplug it, what you're going to see close to the reference voltage. I can't tell how many times drivability problems on a car, and everybody's looking down and looking at the temperature, and everything seems to be okay because it's adaptive memory, right? The voltage, they're not allowed to change that. They have to give you the real McCoy. Remember the old Chrysler products with codes and data and sensor value? We used to go look at the sensor value. That was a real McCoy. Well, OBD2, when it comes down to it, the voltage levels on OBD2 aren't allowed to be substituted. I just showed, I think the last 2 weeks, I just showed about 13 different people the same identical thing. They didn't realize it and stuff. Here's what's happened on adaptive memory, though. Little Johnny borrows a car over the weekend. He beats the living crap out of the car. Okay? And now Dad gets in the car Monday morning and goes to work. Okay? And now it's coming out of first gear at 45 and coming out of second gear at 70. I tell people all the time, you get a call like that, okay, and no matter how slow you are, make the appointment for Thursday. And by Thursday, he's going to call you up and say, hey, it's okay now. And a lot of people say, well, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to have it for the next day. because I really don't have to do anything and I'll get paid, right? What are you going to tell him next week when little Johnny drives it again and stuff, okay? And this happens a lot more than everybody in this room thinks, okay? The adaptive memory, if he drives that long enough, what's going to happen is the computer starts remembering that. All right? I've gotten in some vehicles, it's amazing how that adaptive memory is picking up how to drive. And the problem a lot of times is, I don't know how you're in this area right here, I train all over the place. I train in some places where one car has 4 drivers. I train other places where, you got 4 cars and 1 driver. Now think about it with adaptive memory. My first garage ever in Center City, Philadelphia, I had at least 5 or 6 people in the family needed that 1 car. So everybody's getting out, how's the adaptive memory going to work there? And what they're starting to do now, they're getting people to wear something or something in the key. All right? And how they're getting people to wear that now is that you adjust your mirrors and seats and all that stuff, and then that chip recognizes you and adjusts everything. What you don't know, it's also remembering your adaptive memory. If you don't know anything about My Key technology in Fords, study it, because almost everybody's going to My Key technology. Has anybody ever seen that yet? Okay. My Key technology on a Ford product, what you do, you got a key, and you want to give it to little Johnny. What you do is you program the key first. Everybody knows you don't want to wear a seatbelt. Just listen to that chime about 7 or 8 times, it'll eventually stop, right? Not a My Key technology, it'll be there forever. My Key technology, you can set the volume of the radio not to go over a certain decibel. My Key technology, you can set the car not to go over a certain miles per hour. All right? My Key technology, all in the key. The funny part about it, now this has been out long enough now, I'm getting called in for lack of power. You know what's happening now? Little Johnny has figured a way of taking the sleeve off of his key, all right, and putting that sleeve on Dad's key. See? And then he's got the one, the car can go fast, and Dad's complaining about lack of power now, And I do very similar. Remember when I'm telling you this, remember this, because they're learning how to do this really cool. They used to just steal the key, but Dad's going to say, that's not my key, that's your key. But now they're taking the sleeve off the key and switching them, okay? Listen to me very careful. Take the car out, right, or try to turn the radio up. If you can't turn the radio up, or that seatbelt chime won't go out, do you know you're dealing with that My Key technology now? That's the first thing I do. You save time. Say, I'm done. I got 3-hour diagnostic fee. I'm done in 7 minutes now. Let me tell you what's happened. Your kid just got you. And your kid has your key, and you have his. I'm going to kill him. I don't think you're allowed to do that, but So remember, that's going to be more and more normal now. Okay. Now here we go with the funnels. I want to tell you, I stood there one time thinking about how I can really do a procedure, and stupid things. I'm looking at a bunch of funnels on my shelf. And it's a funnel, I'm looking at it very wide up top, narrow down the bottom, Take this for whatever it's worth. Probably about the same amount of cars that John and Ella's looked at, probably they were about 60,000 vehicles or so. And from working with 60,000 vehicles, what I can tell you, almost every time they're going to fall in one of those 3 funnels I put up there. Engine integrity, ignition, or fuel delivery. Can I have a problem in both funnels, in 2 funnels sometimes? Yeah. You can have a problem in these 2 right here with like your crank sensor or something like that. No fuel, no spark. But I'm going to tell you about 85% of the time, one of those funnels is your problem. Now you got oddball stuff. But my point is that how would you like to get as fast as possible, get into the right funnel? And I see no reason whatsoever now to come out of that funnel. I'm going to stay in that funnel. I'm going to drive down the funnel. Okay? Now I'm going to show you what I teach my daytime people. And what I'm going to show you right now, I'm going to guesstimate about 300 to 350 shops are on this bandwagon now. And I'm going to tell you what the most common thing they tell me after about 3 months or so. I got the same people. I got the same garage. I got the same hours in the day. And we're about 25 or 30% more profitable. All right, now I'm telling you, almost everybody, this doesn't come like easy though. You got to work on it though. Here's what I did with my students. If you don't know anything about NATEF schools, NATEF certified schools have a thing called task lists. They have to complete a certain amount of tasks. And then when NATEF says, what is a P1, a P2, and a P3? A P1 is something they absolutely positively need to know. A P2 is something that they should know. Okay? And a P3 is like something that'd be nice to know. Okay? Here's what I did. There's no NATEF certification for advanced engine performance, right? The L1, but in at school there's nothing, okay? So I came up with a task list myself for my class, And how I come up with the things in the task list is I wrote down everything that I needed to know when I went out on cars. If I didn't know this, I wouldn't have got that car fixed, right? And that would become a P1, a P2, a P3, okay? Look very carefully here. This is, if you ever saw a task list, they have to successfully complete a certain amount of tasks, okay? Here's what I did different, though. Look at that section right there. No other task list I've ever seen in my life has that right there. All right. My students have to tell me when I've done that thing, they have to tell me whether they think they did a G or a P. I refuse to sign it off. I refuse to sign it off unless they put a G or a P in that column right there. All right. And now sometimes something could be a general or a pinpoint test. And I tell them all the time also, I'm not going to argue with you about this either. Okay. If you think you look at the list and you see you got too many G's, you start putting some P's, go ahead, go for it. The only person you're going to be screwing is yourself, though. Because the bottom line is the first day that you realize that what test can get me into the right funnel, all right, and then, very simply, what test can help me drive down the funnel. All right, the one I explained to you a moment ago. Hit a car with propane, it starts up. That no argument whatsoever. That's definitely a G test. And then, very simply, if a car starts up, it's a fuel delivery problem. Now I have to come up with something, a G test or pinpoint test, to go down that funnel. Is this making sense at all? What do you see, the savings on time alone is unbelievable when you start really going after this. And you know what? This is why I started a couple of people before we started. We did this every day, all day long. If you get on board with a paper like this and really get them involved and really understand the G's and the P's, you can actually get that 2 or 3 times a month, drivability, and now you got something documented here. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do this first. I'm going to do this first. I'm going to teach you people what my people call milkman diagnostics, okay? And that's what you'll understand what I'm talking about G's and P's, okay? Now, by the way, just show you a perfect example. Look down here, number 14, a P2, test light usage. They have to show me something on a test light. That's what it says on their things, right? Now, here's what I do. They got a test light. I said, take the test light, put the clip from the test light, put in a positive lug on the battery. The negative point, the probe, put it on the negative side, okay? Now, look at that light. Look at the bulb. Look at it very, very, very careful. Really stare at it, okay? Now remove it off of there, leave it on the battery on the positive side, and go to the front clip of the car and push down with your probe, your test light, and go through the paint and see, number one, does it light? And number two is, does it look like it did before when it was on the battery? And very simple is, all right, when you go to a car, if I had a car right here and I'm looking at a car, remember this now. The front of the car is there, the back of the car is there. If that car is 12 to 15 years old, 100, 200, 300 grounds. Go to a wiring schematic like you have right there. Go to a wiring schematic and look for the grounds and look what the highest number is. You're going to find 3, 5, 7, or 9. And now immediately I just saved a lot of time. Why? Because if I see 5, what I now know is I'm looking at the car here, the front's there and the back's there. 1 is the front clip. 2 is under the hood of the vehicle and on this side of the firewall. 3 is this side of the firewall and half of that interior. Under the back seat where the fuel pump is and all that stuff, that's going to be 4, and the back of the car is 5. And the reason why you want to do that, I don't want to work on 18 foot of a car. I want to work on 3 foot of a car, 4 foot of a car. The grounds go like that. The connectors go like that. The latest, greatest thing, if you haven't seen it yet, SPs. If you're like SP203. SP is a splice pack. A splice pack can be power or ground side. When you see a splice pack problem, the customers call it about 3 things that doesn't work. It just happened to me the other day. This doesn't work, this doesn't work. I went to a wiring diagram like we were talking earlier before. This a wiring diagram was showing me some stuff. What I always do, I see, what do they have in common? And if it happens they all share ground, all share power, what happened on that vehicle, all 3 things the guy said all share ground. Okay? But 5 things were sharing the ground. So I went to the other 2 things and they didn't work either. Right? But he said, I said, you don't have 3 things. Well, you call me a liar? Yep. You got 5 things that don't work. They just never tried the other things. So you know what? If 5 things are all on the same ground and they don't work, I'm going to come up with a really fair idea that I'm going to check my ground. And I want to show you how you do that. Okay? But remember what I said. The worst I've seen so far is a Ford product, the big sports utility vehicles, the big Lincoln sports utility vehicles. They go up to 900s on the ground, 900s in the liner up there. But again, at least I'm saving time though, even if I do get that. Right? And those big sports utilities, each one of the doors, each one of the 4 doors, right, is one of the hundreds also. All right? But remember though, if you got high numbers or you got low numbers in the ground, you're going to narrow it down. So what happened with the test light, I go to the front clip and then look at the test light, see if it's bright as it. And everybody, I'm hearing people on these train expos all the time saying, anybody have a test light? If you do, cut the wire off it, take it home, make an ice pick out of it. I'm never going to do that because it's if you understand what it can do, and the reason why I say that, they want you to load the circuit. All right? Now here's something I do all the time though in seminars. Everybody has a test light, raise your hand. Okay? Keep your hand up. Okay? Now, everybody keep your hand up if you know what the resistance of the test light is. That's what I get all the time. Okay? I have 4 test lights. I take exactly what the resistance is on all 4 of them. The reason why is because, right, simply, if you're going to use it to substitute something, like I did with that torque converter clutch solenoid, right, I don't want to put like I got one test light, 1.7 ohms resistance. Well, a shift solenoid is generally about 42 ohms resistance. I'm not going to take something 1.7 ohms resistance and see if it lights up when I got something going in the circuit 42 ohms resistance, right? So I learned that about the first or second article I wrote in my life for a magazine was Noiser for Nerds. I had a universal Noid light, and I was checking injectors. And I got to the point where you plug in a Noid light in and see if it's flashing. I cranked the vehicle, it was flashing. So what I do, I went on to the next thing. Well, my resistance to those injectors, the old Bosch on the Corvette, were 18 ohms resistance. And my universal Noid light was about 3 ohms resistance. So what happened was, it lit and flashed, so it took me the wrong direction. In my diagnostics shop, you might want to think about this. You actually see the chair rail going all around, just about that same size. Up further though. Up in this area here, about 6 foot in the air, I had basically the same thing, all white, and I had a nail or hook every foot. And something was hanging on that, and above the nail or the hook was a number up there what the resistance of that thing was. So we were saying every time we needed something to substitute, that's called dynamic testing versus static testing. I own my peanut butter and jelly sandwich out before I eat it. That's about it. Resistance checking is dead, right? You're going to test the circuits dynamically, not static, right? So many things will act up. They'll be perfect, all them out perfect, and they'll act up when you operate them, though. Fuel injectors all the time. So, you can start doing this. I go to the recycle center when I'm, they used to be called junkyards. I don't know how you guys, we're not allowed to call them junkyards in Philadelphia anymore. But we go to the recycle center before they crush the recycled car. All right? And I get all light bulbs, sockets, all different kinds. And I use those and I have them hanging up there as a substitute. And what a surprise, it doesn't light that thing then, or it does light that thing. Test lights are good things if you know the resistance of them is. Okay? Now here we go. Milkman Diagnostics. Okay? If you get nothing else out of this thing, remember what I'm going to tell you right now. Remember now, I'm getting cars that have been looked at by everybody and their mother. I am flying halfway across the United States, 3/4 of the way to the United States, and I go tell somebody you got a bad cell in the battery. That's after it was like $3,000, $4,000 in parts put in the damn vehicle. That's after there have been 3 factory troubleshooters on the car. Remember I said, now if I wrote down what I found, my report, I took out a report. If I wrote down that it had a bad cell in the battery, somebody's going to lose their job. Okay? Here's what I come up with, and this is all documentation in here, is that a 12-volt battery, the difference between 0% charge and 100% charge, and very rarely can I ever make this statement. All manufacturers agree with this. 0% charge is considered to be 11.89 volts, and 100% charge is 12.66. That's 0.77 volts between a 0 and 100%. So what I did is I had this ritual that I did every car. I wasn't going to find out 3 hours later that I had a problem on a battery. I wasn't going to find out 3 hours later that I didn't have any gas in the vehicle. We had certain things we did on every vehicle. I said, well, you waste a lot of time. The amount of time it saved was unbelievable. Okay? But what we did is I started looking at things. This is a perfect example. I started developing my own charts and stuff, right? Okay, I needed another battery. Okay, open state, right? So we have nothing else to do. Everybody's got a photographic memory, right? You got a slide now, right? Everybody sees what 10% is, 20%, 30%, 40% is, right? You know what? I got more important things to worry about. Here's my golden rule about a battery, though. I am not going to begin testing anything on a car until I'm positive I got at least a 75% charge on the battery. I have documented, I have set up troubleshooting contests, I put weak batteries in cars, and that car's got so many problems, it's unbelievable. 75% charge or higher will give me good documentation when I'm doing my test, okay? Now everybody see where 75% is there? Between these two right here, right? 12.429 and 12.506, okay? So I got this magic number, 12.45. I've got 12.45 or higher, right? But see all that crap there? This is, I'm going to show you a lot of this kind of stuff tonight, and you take it, you want to do this, you do this. Here's what I come up with. I come up with a 60-second clock. All right, hell of a lot easier. I got way too many things to try to remember, okay? 15 seconds, 30 seconds, 45 seconds, 60 seconds, okay? This doesn't go out perfect because if it was a 66-second clock, it would be perfect, but then I got more stuff to remember. All I'm going to do right now is put a 12 in front of each one of those numbers. I'll put a 12.15, 12.30, 12.45, and 12.60. Okay, now look what I got. It's so simple now. 25% charge, 50% charge, 75% charge, 100% charge. I can go any damn vehicle I want right now. If I see 12.3, you know how many times people say to me, I said, what about the battery? Oh, it's great, man. What do you mean it's great? Well, it's a 12-volt battery. It's a 12.3. You know, you got a 50% charge. All right, more than likely, all your testing is useless right there. All right, so the bottom line is 12.45 or higher before you proceed with any testing. And I'm telling you, at least one car every day, that was the problem. When I say 22 to 28 per day, and a lot of times, you know, it was like 5 or 6 cars a day. And the battery, or the connections to the battery or something. You know, and people say, come on, man, you got to be kidding me, man. You know, I said to everybody, I said, you got a computer in your house or a computer in your office? Yeah. 110, 120 volts going to it? Okay, let's put 85 to it and see how well it works. And everybody immediately says, oh, no way, man. So, see, everybody knows that, right? But why would you expect a car computer system to work okay, you know, with 2.11 volts less than it needs? You know, always remember there's certain things. And in my diagnostic shop, I didn't need tires. You know, every garage usually has racks up top there for tires. I didn't need tires. So I took the tire racks down and put 4x8 panel sheets up there, had them painted by somebody, and I had a kid, a customer of mine, his kid was going to art school. And I said, I want something written on each one of those panels. So what do you want written? I said, I'll call you in a couple weeks. I really want to think about it, what I want on there, and how important it was. The most important thing I want on the first one. And what the very first one said? It said a byproduct current flow is heat. And why? We got a diagnostic shop. We're losing this every day of the week. It's up there, the biggest bold print. You can remember it. The next one, current follows voltage. Very important. Voltage goes down, current goes down. Voltage goes up, current goes up. You can prove yourself with Ohm's law. So all of a sudden now you got a weak primary side of the ignition producing a weak secondary. How if you got a 3-volt voltage drop going to your primary? All right? It really is that simple. That's what happened all the time. And flow times resistor value is voltage drop. This is what it is. I'm telling you, I can see the boards in my head right now. This is the things we looked at all day long. The important stuff, simple stuff. All right? I told you, don't even think about always, what McKenna beat in my head, always, always, always stop. If anybody tells you ohm something out, what you want to do is how can you dynamically test it versus static? And voltage drop testing, instead of measuring resistance, voltage drop testing is a dynamic way of measuring resistance. I can't tell you how many damn times you got a perfect reading when you ohm something out, and then you go put it in the car and make it work. It's completely different. McKenna told me one time, if anybody ever comes into the shop and says, when my car is sitting in the driveway, I'm not using it, it does this, this, and this, then ohm it out. But if he says that when he's using a car and he's driving a car, it does it, why are you ohming stuff out? Do I ever use my ohm meter for anything? I use it for CAN bus right now. I go in pin number 6 and 14, look for 60 ohms RT, and that tells me a lot about the CAN bus and stuff, but I'm a drivability problem. I'm doing dynamic testing, not static testing, though. Okay? Fluke 98, anybody still have one? Fluke 98 was an awesome, awesome tool. If you don't know, Fluke 98 was designed by George Mensha and Corey Glassman from Fluke. Fluke 97 was a very, very intimidating lab scope. I still have my 97, but unless you had it in your hand every day, very intimidating. So George and Corey got together and thought about it. They come out with a Fluke 98, which basically had a lot of user setups in it, right? Or you just highlight something and you put it up, right? Like this right here. See, battery tests? What this thing did very simply is you highlight a battery test. It was a very tough setup. You put positive and negative lead on the battery, all right, and then you crank the vehicle over. Okay. Now, from this point forward tonight, I'm not going to keep on pointing this out. I want you to look for it, though. Take notice what happened here is that the waveform's here, then it drops down. See that line right there? That's called a trigger point. And probably a stupid way to say this now with all the bullshit going on in the world today and stuff, but a trigger on a gun is not supposed to, the gun's not supposed to go off till you pull the trigger. If you want to really enhance your diagnostic skills, if you have a lab scope now, really, really, really learn the capabilities of triggering. Every lab scope comes on automatic. Get it off automatic and you learn how to trigger it. As I show you other slides, I'm going to point this to you a couple times. You don't have to do anything on this. This automatically set it up for you. Here's what's going to happen. You turn the key. What happens to battery voltage? You turn the key. It goes down, right? Remember the old VAT 40s and stuff? You want to stay above 9.6 volts for 15 seconds with a carbon power, right? That's another thing. If I ever did that, McKenna would have killed me. He said, if a customer comes in and says, well, I put my VAT 40 in my car, it does this and that, then go do that, he said. He said, test the car, test the things on the car. How if that thing comes up perfect with a VAT 40, but the guy's got something wired into his car, right? Use the stuff on the car. Really, really quite basic, right? So what this thing did, when you turn the key, the voltage went down, and then this right here, this area right here is called CEMF, counter electric motive force. What that is, in layman's terms, as the engine's cranking, it's then less and less energy needed just to maintain the cranking. The first initial crank is tough. You put a breaker bar on an engine and try to crank it over yourself, getting it moving at first is tough, right? If you get it moving, it's easier, right? That's the EMF. And that's important when you actually look at that. You can pick up main bearings, rod bearings, and everything else. Anything mechanical issues by looking at that. If that thing isn't, you know, like a curl going up, it's staying down low, there's something tough there trying to crank that thing over. Mechanical issues, okay? And then what happens is the car starts up. Take notice, this here is higher. If you go right across, this is higher than there. What the Fluke 98 did, after you got done, it froze on the screen, and then it said 12.8 was this, open state, 10.1 was how far it went down, and 13.8 was the oil never checking out. Think about all the things you just test out in that couple seconds. So you know what? When my Fluke 98 went, I was kind of upset. I liked this test. I'm not going to find out, you know, 4 hours later or 40 minutes later in my procedures, it was nothing more than an electrical problem on a battery or starter or something, okay? So now, here's my Snap-on Modus. I don't care what you use. Everybody says you can't do this, okay? Luckily, I've been doing it for a long time before people think I can't do it. Now look what I'm doing right now. Same issue I got right here. What I do different is, see that point right there, see that X? That's my trigger point. I have to set that. See down here, these three boxes down here? Now almost all scopes will do the same thing, right? I got to decide which channel I want to trigger off of. Well, I'm only using one channel right now, so I'm going to trigger off of that channel. See the yellow here? I'm triggering off of channel 1. See this line going down and slant down? Your scope might have an arrow up, an arrow down, it might have it like that. That means that it's going to start the waveform on a negative slope. So when the voltage goes down, it's going to start the waveform. The last one over here, I set my trigger level. So what I did here, there's 12 volts there and 8 there. That's about 11.8 volts. What happened, I put the leads on the battery, and nothing's going to happen now until I turn the key. Meets my trigger requirement, right? And what is nice about triggering is when you do get it to start, it's going to show everything that happened before also. The difference on this and that Fluke 98, when I'm cranking the vehicle over, and it starts or whatever, then I just hit the freeze button, right on this one here is right there, and I got the picture now. Now I can bring the cursors up. What I did on this vehicle, I put cursor number 1 right here, and that's 12.75 volts. That's the open state of the battery. And then the battery voltage went down right here and went down to 9.31. Let's just say it's saved by 9.6, but 9.3, that's not my problem, okay? And then where it's up, and then my CEMF, and then the vehicle started, okay? Now, This vehicle had 5 issues. The owner of the vehicle took it to a dealer, and the dealer couldn't figure out what was wrong with it. It was intermittent, he said, and all this other stuff. He's got 5 different issues on the thing, okay? Would anybody in front of me right now want to continue looking for the drivability problem with that system the way it is right now? Because look what happens. That's my triggering right there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring my cursor over here. 12.26 when the car started up. Why did everybody before me go and start looking for drivability issues? The owner is not working on this vehicle. Right? I am not even going to think about looking at drivability issues until I get the alternator working. So what I did, I removed the connector on the back of the alternator, got all this beautiful corrosion built up back there, right? Cleaned it up, put it back together, and did the test again. Okay? This time what happened was, here's my open state of 13.11 because I had a surface charge now, right? And then when the alternator kicked in, right, 14.19 right there. And by the way, the company that makes the motors, I tell them 1,000 times, you know, they always ask me, what do you think, how can you improve it? How can we improve it? Snap-on doesn't make it, okay? How can you improve it? I said, you know, give me the ability to click and drag that box. I'm going to get it out of the way sometimes, okay? But that's always comes up right there for the cursors, okay? So now I got an alternator working. Guess what happened to all my issues? They're gone. Every issue on that car is gone, okay? Now here's a very, very, very important thing. When you start doing this stuff, you're going to start seeing things on cars that you've never saw before. And what I see way too much of, a lot of waste of time because you never saw that before. And now what you're going to do is, oh my God, look, that must be the problem right there. That's, you know, you can't fix something that's not broken. There's a lot of things called modes of operation in cars today. You're going to have to start looking at good cars. And they'll be saying, well, who's going to pay me for that? You know, I'm telling you right now, you may not be paid at that moment. You know, start looking at cars. Keep your equipment out. Keep your scanners out. Keep your lab scopes out. And on a brake job, you know, you got to road test it anyways and stuff. You know, just gather the information. Don't be sitting there studying. You got to get another car. Just film it. And when you get a chance, go back and look at things. Right? I do it all the time. I showed guys last night. This is it's called a CR reader by Launch. Anybody see these things yet? Okay. I don't think I've ever used this yet to go after a drivability problem. But what I do with it is, it's got a 16-pin OB2 connector. All right, I plug it in. Now I got a road test on here from Philadelphia to the TST headquarters. All right, when I get back, I'm going to download it. What I do is, I just look at the cars. My truck is fine. I just look at normal. All right, and I got a good baseline at that point. All right, so it doesn't take a lot of time to do something. I did these things here. You guys can go to George Mentz at AES. It's listed like 129. All right, he sells them for like $64. So for $64, you know, what you do, you download it, you got a thing in there, you got a cable, USB, the mini USB, you hook it up, download it, and you got all this damn road test. You can record up to 12 or 24 hours on it. I think it's 12 or 24, you can do either one. The bottom line is that I don't say it's as accurate as I want it to be for my diagnostics. All right, I might change my mind about that later. What I use it for right now is get used to normal though. And what I'm trying to tell you right now, and I'll pass this around, and there's a sensor on here. If you try to leave the building with it, it'll. And you know what? Somebody did take one, and I forgot to tell everybody that you have to also take the piece of paper with the serial number, or you'll never be able to use it and stuff too. You know. All right. What's your name? What's your first name? Ayub. Okay. Tell everybody what that thing there is. What is that thing there? Now, you know what people tell me? I'll help you out a little bit. People tell me that I was probably standing in front of the thing one time and somebody like put that's not what is that? Anybody understand what I'm pointing to? Look at the whole waveform. Here's the open state. Here's the balls going down. There's the CEMF, and then we got this thing here, and then we got an alternator output. What is that? And I'm going to help you out. It's not going to be there all the time. It's going to be intermittent. This is what I'm talking about. You got to understand how stuff is supposed to work. Okay? Anybody ever hear a thing, the exaltation circuit of an alternator? I bet everybody in this room has started a car up one time or another, and you got a very dim generator light on or something, right? Alternator light on, or a charger light on, battery light on, or whatever. You hit the throttle, and it went out and stayed out, right? What you just did, you just excited the alternator. Right? Alternators need to be caught, the excitation circuit kick in before I start to work. 99.9% of the time, they do a great job of it themselves. Well, I just said something to you. It's a little odd, though. I said, you're not going to see it all the time. This is a hot restart. If it's a cold car, it'll be high anyway. Okay? You won't see that if it's a cold startup. Well, this is a hot startup, so they have to flare the RPM to get the alternator working. Okay? Now we say, well, man, you'll hear that. No, you won't. Here's why. From this side of my screen to this side of my screen is 2 seconds, or 2,000 milliseconds. If you follow the lines down, from right here down and right here down, you're looking at less than 200 of a second there. All right? I started this thing up, and I couldn't hear it. It does it so fast, and it kicks in that, gets that alternator working. My point on this thing is that a lot of time will be wasted on things like this. Right, I'll say, I think I found it, man. I got something really weird here, a really odd thing. You got to know what good is. And that's what I'm talking about is very simple, is record good operating cars and get used to what normal is and stuff.
Okay, so you said 12.45 is your battery voltage, stated charge. Do you have do you still use 9.6 for a minimum on the cranking? Do you have a number or do you use numbers?
No, it's a really good question, Doug, because the manufacturers are really getting concerned about all this kind of stuff. I'll tell you what's coming down the pike, and I guarantee it's going to happen. They don't want to see that battery voltage dropping down under a certain level. You know, we're talking about 9.6.
I'm going to say 10.
Okay, manufacturers right now are talking about not letting the car start if it drops down like, I think it's like 8.6, 8.7. Now, 8.6, 8.7, a lot of cars are doing that every time of the week. Imagine getting a car towed in now, it cranks and won't start. I don't know, too many people would know. That's why it's getting so important. And the reason why they're saying that, like you're saying, I like to see high too, because when you do get it started, you need a good operating system to operate all that stuff.
Because I see things like don't boot up, like
Yep.
certain modules don't boot up, or test the circuit. As soon as you start it up and it says circuit error because it only had 11 volts and it was looking for 12. Or
Funny you say that, because from Connecticut last night to here tonight, driving, I was on the phone most of the time. I kept pulling off the side. I don't like to drive when I'm talking on the phone. I'm not that smart of a person to do both. I pull off the side of the road a couple of times because, anybody hear a guy named Paul DiGiuseppe? Do you guys ever have Paul up here? Okay. Paul's a national trainer for MAX, Mobile Air Conditioning Society. And Paul wants me to do an article for the newsletter, kind of what you're talking about right now. And it's called load shedding. We don't have time to get into this right now, but listen very carefully. Believe it or not, I've been called out a lot of times for air conditioning problem the last couple of years. You know, you're not going to call me out for an air conditioning problem. I'm going to charge you a fortune, right? Here's what's happening. If you got electrical issues, they know weak battery, weak alternator can cause a lot of pollutants, right? So what they're going to do is they're not going to give you the things that you can do without, like air conditioning. You know how many times air conditioning worked on the last couple of years and the air conditioning doesn't work and there's nothing wrong with the air conditioning? What's actually happened, you might get a weak battery or a weak alternator. It's called load shedding. Okay, just like the thing out back there, the shed. And what it's doing is making an intelligent decision that if we give you that extra stuff, we could hurt the drivability as far as the pollutant level. So they're not doing that. Now, just a little heads up why he wants me to do an article on it and stuff, because if it works the way it's supposed to be, probably not that big of a deal. A lot of your Chevys and your GMC trucks have load shedding in them. Okay, they're the ones that use as guinea pigs. And next time you get one of those late model GM trucks or pickups in it, look at the power battery cable. Look at the positive battery cable and follow it down. And take note, the battery cable a lot of times goes into a cradle, right? A 3-sided cradle. It looks like a holder for the cable. It's not a holder. What it is, it's a device to picking up the current. Basically, it's an amp probe. And what happens is somebody goes off the road, four-wheeling or something, and loads it up with mud, right? All of a sudden now it's reading less current than it really is there, and now the load shedding kicks in. So I've done, I'm going to say at least 25 times so far, taken the battery cable out of the cradle, cleaned everything up, put it back down again. Now the air conditioning works okay now and everything else. It could even like rear window defoggers and all that stuff. So what you're saying is very, very valid point there. We got a lot of stuff now we're trying to keep running. And some stuff is nice to have, and some things absolutely positive you need, not just load shedding comes in and stuff, you know. And you even got your charging systems today. They're called smart or intelligent smart systems. And basically, in a nutshell, if you got a bad battery, the owner just kicks out and says, I'm tired, man. I'm trying to charge him for 10 minutes now. I won't take any charge. And it gets towed in your shop. It's going to look like a bad alternator. Because the thing is smart enough to know if I keep going and trying to charge up this rock, I'm going to burn myself up. I just had a 2005, out of warranty, 2005 Ford Crown Victoria that was pulse-width modulating. The auto is pulse-width modulating 95% of the time. That alternator can run anywhere to $1,300 to $1,900, and all it was the battery was bad. 2006 is smart, and it won't do that. 2005 is a dumb charging system, and it'll keep trying to charge the rock. So all your points are very, very valid points on a lot of this drivability stuff. All right? You got to keep in mind, all this stuff's out of warranty now. We don't get that stuff. This stuff's out of warranty now. It's all coming down the pike, you know. I said I went down there with at New Orleans, did some classes down in New Orleans, drivability. I said, while you're here anyway, they had all these body shop guys. NACE, it's a National Automotive Congress for the body guys and stuff. And they said, while you're here, can you do stuff with those guys? And I said, yeah, here's the first thing I do. What's the 3 most common things I saw when I went into body shops? Number 1, grounds. Number 2, grounds. Number 3, grounds. Because I told you what happens is these cars are hit and just things not grounded right, okay? Now this is going to be, if you get nothing else out of this seminar, I got people emailing me all the time saying, oh man, that's fantastic. Fast, easy way to tell if you need to stay here or not as far as grounds, okay? What I'm doing here, that picture right there is my students, my daytime students. Write this down or something on this slide. Here's what they're doing. One lead is on a clean spot on the firewall. One lead is on the alternator housing. Not on the positive low in the alternator, the housing. If you don't know it, the back of an alternator, the housing of an alternator should be the most negative portion of a vehicle when it's running. I don't like to go to the battery because you got all the electrical noise. I use the back of the alternator, the housing itself, or any part I can get the housing of the alternator. Clean spot on the firewall. It's a voltage drop test on the ground integrity of the whole car. 2,000 RPM. Put every load you can find on the car. Put every rear one in the fire, put air, put everything on. That's what you're seeing right now. This car is running at 2,000 RPM. My students have this thing on. And what they're doing is back of the alternator housing and a firewall. All right, and they're taking a reading. If it's under 300 millivolts, your ground integrity of the whole car is good. You know how many times I've done this? I've seen like 900 millivolts, 1 volt, 1.2 volts. All right, you got a problem. At that point now, what I'm going to do is I got my most useful tool. Everybody wants to, say, what tool we would never want to leave the house without? Right there, remote starter button. Think about it. Not a cheap one, a really heavy duty one. Electricity's lazy. It always want to take the easiest path. What I'm going to do now, if I get a lousy reading here, I'm going to take the remote starter button, I'm going to go down to a known good ground, I'm going to go to the frame or the negative side of the battery, and the other side of this thing is going to the firewall. I push that button, which my students did, right there. My students are pushing that button on the thing, and now they got 80.5. That was a good reading to begin with, but even a good reading went down slightly though, right? You know how many times I've done this, and I got 900, 1,000, 1.2 volts. I push that button, and the thing goes down like 80 or so. Right? The sun comes out, the birds chirp, and everything's beautiful. I just enhanced the ground circuit, basically, of the whole firewall. Yeah. And you know what I'm seeing a lot of, I told you before, the welding. Somebody's welding the firewall back. They're doing a good job welding it, but the weld joints are too high resistance. So what I'm telling them, and then you got your old timers and stuff, remember this shit. 20 years ago, 25 years ago, we had a lot of braided ground straps on cars. Right? And guess what? Look at a brand new car. They're all back. And the reason why is because of this kind of stuff here. If I get that thing to go down to that kind of reading with that remote starter button, I got 1 or 2 choices now. I'm going to sell this to the customer, tell them to keep his thumb on it. All right? Or I'm going to put a braided ground strap on the thing. All right? When I put a braided ground strap on it, every time it comes right back to this number again because I'm enhancing the ground. All right, take notice on the brand new cars, right, and actually not even new cars, the last 5 years of cars, there's a lot more braided ground straps than it ever did before because of the simple fact you got to get that ground integrity there. All right, very, very good test. I tell body shops, do this on every car. All right, if you can't get this thing down on the 300 millivolts by doing the test, don't let the car go. It's going to come back. I'm guaranteed it's going to come back. And it's so simple fix, braided ground strap on a thing, it'll bring that thing down. Now all the stuff's supposed to work, right? I used to see some of the most beautiful looking cars I've ever seen in my life after accidents. You know, you put your foot on the brake, rear wiper goes on. You know, we've seen all that old crap where you hit the brake and the turn signal light come on the dash and stuff. That's all basic stuff like that. And today's cars, you got so many things working, you know, that you got to get good grounds in the car. All right? Very, 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 very good test. I get emails from people all over the damn country about this. Say, man, this works out perfect. It's fast, it's easy, and it's really, really, really accurate. You get a good car, that's going to be down pretty damn low. Remote starter button. How I use this stuff all the time. All right. This vehicle here is a Corvette. And what happened on this Corvette, it turned out that everybody wound up putting an injection cleaner through the thing and destroyed the injectors on the thing. Everybody knows what the bottom of an injector pattern is supposed to look like, right? Computer pulls the path to ground, and then your pulse width, nice flat line, right? And then you got your spike, right? This particular vehicle, what happened was the pulse width of the injectors, the ground was like this. Pulls down, but then it went up on a slant. You know, what it's going on? I got something, it's pulling ground, but it can't stay there, right? So one of two things it's going to be. It's going to be the ground out here or someplace. And I love this crap all the time. Bad grounds in a PCM. There are no grounds in PCMs. There are no grounds in PCMs. There's passive ground, control ground. The grounds aren't in the PCM. A lot of times you'll see something like this. It comes in there. Well, there's one right there. They stopped it there. Right? It doesn't stay there. It comes out on something. If you do see a ground go in and it just doesn't come out, that's called a sense ground. That's whether or not, that's how the computer knows whether that side of it is grounded. It doesn't ground there though. Okay? So what I did with this thing now, I got pulse width of the injector staying like this. Okay, look what I did. I connected to the ground coming out, and now my grounds come over here to ground 104, the rear of the engine behind the valve cover. I'm not taking anything off. I'm going to push the button. If I push that button and that pulse width of the injector pulls down like this, the only thing I took the place of is this circuit here, right? I know I got to stay out here. On this particular vehicle, when I did it, it stayed exactly where it was. It's the driver itself was in that vehicle. The driver in the PCM, the control of the ground, had high resistance in it. By the way, due to the injectors pulling too much current because they were shorted out from somebody cleaning it. We're going to get into that, you know, it's like, okay, we found something. Why? Well, because of this. That's a problem a lot of times talking to customers about that. Because every customer, you're going to get rid of the car in 2 weeks anyway, right? You know, but you try to tell them. How many times I said to a customer, your car runs now, it didn't run before. I didn't find a problem yet though. Anything I've done so far is I repaired or found the effect of the problem. And they say, well, I'm going to get rid of it in 2 weeks anyway. Okay, sign here, because if I tell them that and they decide to let the car go down, I can't force them to go further with it, right? But it's not a comeback then when it comes back. That's how, I always tell people all the time, I work on more cars than anybody else out there per day, and our comeback ratio is about 2%. We got a lot of cars back, but it was the cars that I told the guy, we didn't fix it yet. That's a perfect example about how many times you replace an ignition module, and it went bad again. How many times you replace a fuel pump, it went bad again. They were all the effects of the problem. They weren't the problem. Okay? And if you don't tell the people that, it is a comeback then. You just got to be smart enough and know how it works to explain it to the customer. That's all. My other tool, I'll never leave home without, like to get a car started, my propane enrichment tool. Mine, by the way, this is mine. One of my students broke my little stub here. That's actually my 1968 Chrysler carburetor adjusting tool. And by the way, if you don't know it, OTC, go do a Google search on it. OTC had a really heavy-duty brass one, and it went away for a long time. I think because I'm all over the damn country talking about this damn thing, it's back on the market again now. I think it's 7136, I think is the part number for the thing. And the end result is these things are great. It's an atomized vaporized hydrocarbon. And the first time anybody in front of me right now ever sees a 2+2 can blow off from spraying 2+2 and running the car in, you'll never use it again. You got much better control over this thing. And we can go a whole damn class on like PO420s. I diagnose PO420s all the time. What Pierre said, that with a 5-gas analyzer and a propane, you're not guessing, man. You're pinpointing that thing down and stuff, right? 85, 15%. Okay, here we go with this now. 85% of everything happens in a car happens on every car. 15% is how does that car do it. If I went around the horn right now and I said, okay, let's talk about ignition system. You tell me what kind of car you have. I'm going to take a guess that everybody's car, you build a primary circuit and you collapse it and it goes in makes a secondary, right? That's the 85%. Everybody realized how many different 15% there are though? So here's what I tell people all the time, especially independents. You should never, never, never be going to an information system for the 85%. Okay, you should know it. Inside, upside, and backwards. It ain't changed. It hasn't changed. If anybody sat in my TST presentation at that big event, I started off, I talked about the brand new COP system that's coming out soon, and I had everybody hook, line, and sinker because I was actually talking about a 1928 Model T. If you ever look at my 1928 Model T, it's a COP system. So my point is, it doesn't change, right? But the way it collapses, the way it builds it changes, right? So here's the way I deal with this. I am not embarrassed whatsoever to look up to 15%. Matter of fact, I encourage everybody to look at 15%. If you work at a shop that specializes in one or two kind of cars, and I'd say, you know what, it's okay to learn a little more about the 15%. But just knowing very simply where to get that 15%. And I am not going to go to the car whatsoever until I know my opponent. All right, it's a really important statement. I'm going to waste time, what everybody thinks I'm doing. You're going to get working pretty soon? I'm paying a lot of money, man. You're over at the computer with your box of crayons and stuff, right? And I said with his wiring diagram, I wouldn't touch anything until I color code the wiring diagram and figure out how this one works. You know what usually happens then? I go to the car. I'm in there for just a couple minutes at that point then. For whatever reason, we just can't accept, and especially our bosses can't accept a lot of time. He looks out the window. Boss looks out the window, he sees 4 guys running around like crazy and sees the other guy out there with a box of crayons and looking at the computer, all right, driving him nuts. But I get phone calls from people all the time, and they say, how's my student working? Oh, well, he's, yeah. I said, come on, man, what's wrong? And he said, well, every time I look at it, he's got a box of crayons, man. He's doing that. I said, well, okay. How's his numbers? What do you mean? His comebacks. Oh, man, he doesn't get any. Okay, how's his numbers? He's very profitable. It just drives him crazy because he's not used to seeing that. The other guys are running around like crazy screwing cars up. All right? That's what I see all the time. So stop, slow down to be more efficient when it comes down to 85, 15%. I'll tell you how much I really believe in this. I have a lot of friends of mine that are factory troubleshooters. I got a real good friend of mine. It's on a factory hotline for one of the major manufacturers. About 3 months ago, he said to me, I don't know how you do this shit, man. I don't know how the hell you do all that crap. I said, what do you mean? He said, we got 51 TSBs last month. All right, techno service bulletins last month, 51 of them, man. How can you work on all of them kind of cards? I'm one manufacturer, 51 technical service bulletins about changes. His name is Bill. I said, Bill, do me a favor, go to work tomorrow. Take an 8.5 and 11 piece of paper, draw a line down the center. Write 15% on top and 85% on the other side on top. I explain them what I just told you people. 85% of everything on a car happens the same way. 15% is how does that car do it. Okay? When you go to work tomorrow, pull up all your TSBs and read them very carefully and then put a notch on one side of the paper or the other and tell me what happens. Call me up next day, and I expect them to say like 45 of them, or on the 15%. So 51 of them were on the 15%. Every one of them was on the 15%, how that manufacturer does it. They keep changing the way they do it. They're not going to put the pistons in upside down. They're not putting the electric cranks in yet, right? It's all 85%. So, it's okay to know where to get that 15% at and work on that car. You know what we do? I had one like that last week, or you hook to your buddy 2 bays down. You got a car last week was hesitating with accelerating. What did it turn out to be? You know what you just said? I'm making too much money this week, and I really need to lose my butt now. Because the first time you start trying to diagnose a vehicle off another vehicle you worked on, even if it's the same make, you know damn well they just changed that 15%. And this is where people start to short out things and do smoke tests because you're jumping things you shouldn't be jumping and everything else, right? You got it. When I go to the car, I've got my wiring diagram color-coded. I know the 15%. I'm going there literally in minutes to figure out what is good and what is bad. So it looks like I'm wasting time, but I'm making time there. And it's going to get fixed, and it's going to get fixed correctly. All right? 85, 15%. Okay? Here's a perfect example. PO 301. Everybody in this room knows what 301 is. All right? What's a PO 301? What's your name? What's a PO 301? Okay, anybody? Misfire. It's a misfire number 1 cylinder, right? Powertrain control, 0, generic. Means everybody can have it, right? Not a 1, it's a 0. And everybody knows we have 2 and 3 there also now, right? And the middle is 3, that means it's ignition system. And if a misfire, the last 2 numbers of the cylinder, right? Doesn't it seem a little strange, everybody? Everybody's got, I'm going to take a wild guess, everybody's got a cylinder number 1. If it was a PO 306 or 307, I'd say, well, that, everybody doesn't have a 6 or 7, but everybody's got a cylinder number 1, right? But look at this, though. This is not my numbers. This is from the University of Colorado, does studies on OBD2, and it's saying that 70% of the 301s, right, are coming from Dodge. You know what? Here's what you got, whether you like to or not, here's what you got to do. You got to start, look at the flags. What are they doing different? Now, I'm going to tell you something, you probably heard this before. I'm going to tell you it's a fact. It's easier to work on higher-end cars than it is in quote-unquote lower-end cars. I've worked on everything you can think of, and it's easier to work on high-end cars. The reason being is they got a lot more money from that person. They can put a lot more information on that car, a lot more sensors and stuff, right? Here's what happens. Most people don't know this. The federal law says you have to know a misfire, and you have to know what cylinder is misfiring. That's a federal law, okay? You have to know what the misfire is coming from, the ignition or fuel, and you have to know what cylinder it is, okay? That's where seems where everybody likes to stop reading, though. Let me tell you the rest of the paragraph. The rest of the paragraph says that you can monitor, a cylinder number 1 is misfiring from this one here. It could be fuel, it could be a fuel injector, it could be a cap coil, right? Okay? So how do we come up with this then? What we're going to do is, and most cars do this strategy, I'm going to tell you right now, you monitor one or the other, either the ignition or the fuel injector. And if that one's okay, then blame the other one. Okay? I have this problem in my truck. I got a 2006 Dodge Dakota out there. I call it my airport truck. It usually sits in more airports than anybody, when I'm flying to different places. And if we ever do get a summer and we still get heat, I will have a PO 301 every day. All right, I've had it for the last 4 years, 5 years. And basically what happens is when I teach at the school, I'm there for 6 hours, and my truck's outside in the sun, and it's a returnless fuel system. Okay? And what's a pretty cool thing, and do this, you'll see what I'm talking about. Take a little level and put a little level on a fuel rail in a returnless system. And take notice that almost all returnless systems, they slant up, they tilt up a little bit toward the front. Okay? Sometimes it's so slow, you have to put a level on it to see it though. Okay, my truck now has ethanol fuel in it, E10, right? And it's sitting out in the hot sun. What's happening to the fuel in the rail now? It's starting to atomize and vaporize. And the fact it's tilted up a little bit, where's the atomization of the thing that's going up front, right? So now what happens is, eventually I go out and I start the vehicle up, and what happens is the first cylinder, being up at the engine, is running very, very lean because of the vapors. And now I get a PO 301 though. And you say, well, wait, hold it, man. You just said there's fuel, this and that. I say, yep. Here's what happens. My Dodge truck looks at the injector, and it monitors the ground of the injector. Is my injector being grounded and let go, and grounded and let go? Yep. So it says, okay, the injector's working good, so it must be ignition. And that's why you get a 301 on all these Dodges. And the funny part about this, the post-secondary school I teach at, we rent 4 classrooms out to Chrysler Corporation, and they have the factory classes there. And I can't tell how many times I'm walking down the hallway and I'm Chrysler instructors telling them they're factory training guys, and if we're having a lot of problems with cop coils on these Dodge products and stuff. And one of the top guys is a real good friend of mine, and I heard him say that one day. I waited till everybody left, and I said, "Come here, man, come here. We got to talk, man. There's nothing wrong with your cop coils." He goes, "Are you kidding me, man?" I said, "They're going bad like crazy." "Oh, yeah, they're going bad. That's the effect of a problem, though." He goes, "What do you mean?" What they do in the cop coils is they mold them together. Right? Chrysler doesn't have that short thing with a rubber thing. They have a plastic mold almost all the way down. And if you look very carefully, halfway down, you'll see a line where they're molded together at. And when you're running lean too long, what happens is your firing balls goes through the roof, and it starts leaking out through there. So that, what they're talking about, the cop coils being bad, that's the result of a problem. It's not the problem. And I told him what's happened on the thing. He goes, "You really? I don't think I could do that." I said, "Okay, come out today at 2 o'clock, and you and I are going to go for a ride." We started up, went out for a ride. Within 5 minutes, my light come on. I got PO 301. He goes, "Well, you know, that could be." Okay, I'll give you that. It could be. All right, meet me out tomorrow. He said, "Well, you already showed me." "No, meet me out here tomorrow." All right, the next day at 2 o'clock, he came out, but he doesn't know that at 1 o'clock I went out there first. And at lunchtime, at 10:30, what I did, I took a bucket with water and ice, and I took a rag, a towel actually, and I put it in a bucket. I had an ice cold towel. This goes back to my old racing days with a cool can. You run a cool can, you run the fuel, and put ice pack on ice, and you bring the fuel back to liquid again, you condense it back to liquid again right before it goes to your race engine, okay? So what I did, I took that cold towel, and I wrapped it around the fuel rail, and I condensed that fuel back to liquid again. We went out and drove it, and it was fine. So, you know, he said, "Well, it could be because," and you know, you can say, "Oh, you could be all you want." I just proved to you what exactly was wrong with this vehicle. And I said, "But you know what? The cop coil is going to go bad. And when it goes bad, you guys are going to give me a free one, even though it's out of warranty." And he says, "No, we can't do it. If it's not a warranty, you can't give it." I said, "I'll tell you right now, you will be giving me a free one." He said, "Well, why is that?" "Because every manufacturer, every magazine's out there asking me to write articles, and I'm thinking about a really good topic about an article." Very happy what I heard during the break. I heard a lot of really good questions, a lot of comments. The second half of this is going to be different. I'm going to go a little bit quicker pace on the thing, but important. I got the groundwork laid down now. I want to try to show you now how to attack things. 3 different people were telling me about the problems they have on cars right now and stuff. And a lot of it's just basic common sense. You know what I don't like. I go to especially some factory documentation, and they want me to go, you know, 16 pages of information, do this and this and this. Number one thing, a couple things I want you to leave here with, and remember things that really they work for me. You try them also. I never go to a car and try to find out what's wrong with it. It sounds stupid. I try to find what is okay. And if I go, let's for instance, I go down and I check the secondary side of the ignition, and not just put a Phillips head screwdriver next to the intake or the exhaust manifold, but I truly put a spark tester in there, and I know I got a good strong secondary ignition. Just think for 1 second about how much stuff you just eliminated testing. Everything had to work before that for that to work, right? All right, it's very important you think that way. Okay. What I said to somebody, I said, and Pierre talked about this earlier, probably the most awesome diagnostic tool that ever was out there went away, and it's a big comeback right now, is the exhaust analyzer. Luckily for me, I never stopped using one. I was going to tell you everything that's happened in that combustion chamber. And if you see everything good on the exhaust analyzer, you know a lot about that engine and stuff, okay? So what I'm going to try to show you now, basically in the second half here, is that what I saw all the time, and the stuff, are you actually looking at the problem, or you're looking at the effect of the problem? The easiest one me to always talk about is the fuel pumps. And just a little heads up, I can't go deep into all my theories, but here's what I do a lot of times, like for instance, like coolant temperature sensors, right? Somebody said to me recently, says, you know, I can't do this crap, man. You know, I just checked, you got like 77 different damn inputs, man. I'm done with this crap, man. I said, okay, get out. Get out there. And he says, you know, I expect a little bit more compassion from you. I said, well, call your mother if you want compassion. I said, you know, you're telling me that you can't do it then, I guess. I said, but let me tell you the fact of the matter is, though, there isn't 77 different inputs. And he goes, you call me a liar? I said, yeah, that's what I'm doing. Yep, call you a liar. And he goes, well, why are you saying it? I said, for instance, like, look, coolant temperature sensor, air temperature sensor, transmission fluid temperature sensor, gasoline temperature sensor, they're all thermistors. All right? So once you learn a thermistor, you just learn, I don't know, 15 different inputs, right? So there really isn't 77 different things. So what I did is I told him, and I tell everybody in this room, there really is not that many inputs. You got an input that tells you the position of something, probably, like a throttle position sensor, right? You got an input that tells you the pressure or the vacuum of something. You got a sensor that tells you the temperature of something. You can break these down into categories. And once you fully understand how they work, you can eliminate so many things and stuff. I just sit there and I says knocking out big blocks at a time. You know, and I get down and keeps one little tiny thing standing there staring me in the eyes and stuff, you know. It's got to be in this circuit right here. The other circuits are working okay. All right? So now look at here. This is why the electrical part of it I talked about is so important. This whole scenario, this particular one here come up, putting a fourth fuel pump in a vehicle in 18 months. You know, gets towed in, put a pump in, it runs again. I said, you know, it comes down to the basics, you know. A series circuit is designed in such a way that you're going to get a full voltage drop across it if there's nothing else in the circuit. You could have extra resistance in some of them, a two-speed pump or a variable speed pump. We're going to talk basics right now. You got one device in it, a DC motor, all right? And basically, if you got full voltage to it and there's nothing else here, you take your DVM. Now, mechanics that turn around to me all the time and say, go get my x-ray machine. And every time he said that, everybody's looking at him like, what are you, crazy? I was the only one who knew what he was talking about. He just asked me to go get his voltmeter. Long before it was fashionable, he did voltage drop testing versus resistance testing. So now the pump, you put a new pump in it, what he would do with a voltmeter, he'd come across the unit and go on one lead on the other one side, one lead on the other side. And remember, always remember, how does a voltmeter actually work? It just tells you the difference between the voltage. The 2 points you went on to. I can't tell you how many times I say, you know, go to the power side of that circuit where the connector is and put one lead on one side, one lead. I can't do that. Why not? Because I got a red lead and a black lead, you know. So, you know, that's why I like to look at a lot of snap-on things. Like put a yellow leads on and green leads on, all that stuff, so you get out of that mentality. So a voltmeter is going to tell you the difference between when you put the two leads. So when you put a new fuel pump in this vehicle and it runs now, if I go here and I read 14.7 volts, that means I'm going to get all my voltage there, and I got good ground. The vehicle I went out on recently with this guy is that he had 10.26 volts when he went across the pump. Okay? Now, very simply is you either got high resistance, extra resistance on the power side or the ground side. Okay? I must really be one of the cheapest techs out there because my piece of equipment, I know every little tiny thing that piece of equipment can do. I go to people all the time, and how much do you think you understand that piece of equipment? And they always want to tell me 100%. But they say like 85%. And I'll show them about 10, 15 minutes of things, and they say, you know, I ask them the question again. They say, I was using about 15% of it. Tomorrow morning, if you don't have a voltmeter, you can't do this. If you have a voltmeter, tomorrow morning, look at your voltmeter. And see if your voltmeter has a button on it that says REL or has a picture of a triangle. And the triangle is a delta function. If it doesn't say delta, it'll be REL, relative delta. And what you want to do, you want to learn how to use that. And here's what I tell people to do all the time. I say you look at good cars first and what good is. Use your meter on good vehicles first. Before you start the car up tomorrow, put the leads on a battery. When you put the leads on a car battery, then push the delta button or the REL button. Okay? Now take the leads off and start the car. Put the leads back on again after you start the car. You're probably going to read like 1.5, 1.6 volts a second time. The reason being is what that does, it takes the first reading and the second reading and shows you what the difference was. When you start the car up, the alternator starts to work, right? So what actually really just happened, the first time you took a reading like 12.6, and then the alternator kicked in and went a volt and a half or 2 volts higher than that, and that's how you got that reading. Now, you really don't need it for something like that, but you want to get used to how, trust your meter. So what I'm going to do on something like this is, if I want to do a voltage drop, it turns out that I'm losing up here, what I can do, instead of doing a voltage drop from here to here, which is like, I don't know, 8 foot of the car, I can measure voltage here, hit the delta button, and come over here, and if I see 0, I know it's the same voltage there. Or go to the back of the car where the pump is. It's a very powerful diagnostic tool to use. Most times when I find problem in the fuel pumps, they're on the ground side. All right, so this one here is very simple to check for power side or ground side because you got 10.26 volts going across here. All I got to do is go here and I want to get my same voltage that it's over there. So I know it's on the ground side. This is a very, very, very powerful trick that McKenna taught me. He taught me how to walk my meter. All right, he called walk your meter. That's what he said. I know what he's talking about. What he wanted me to do is I got 10.26 volts. Everybody can see what the problem is, right? What he tells me to do now is to take the lead, make sure it's on the ground side. Put your meter across there, get the remote starter button. No good ground, one lead. Remote starter button right here on the ground side of the pump. Leave your meter on there and push the button. Everybody see what's going to happen now? It's going to, electricity's lazy. It's going to take the easiest path. What's going to happen, you're going to get your full voltage drop across there. You're positive it's on the ground side now.
So it's 0 out?
Yep, because it's just an easier path, right? Okay, now we're going to walk the meter. McKenna used to drive me nuts all the time. He never, I 25 years studied on him. He never charged me, but I went to his shop all the time and helped him out, and he'd give me another lesson. He told me, I'm going to show you how to be very, very effective with your meter tomorrow. So I went over to the shop the next day, and he says to me, he's doing this and doing that, and he says, okay, I'm going to show you how to do this. And he says, showed me everything I showed you so far, and he said, did you ever go down Chesapeake Bay Bridge? I said, yeah. I don't really care, though, about that. I want to know about, he goes, oh, okay, I don't know, but I want to talk about this first. He said, what was the Chesapeake Bay Bridge like? I said, it was a damn bridge. I don't really care about this bridge. I want to know, yeah, I know you're doing stuff, but let's talk about that bridge and stuff. Now I want to kill him, right? And he says to me, talk to me, how was that bridge? Anybody ever go across the Chesapeake Bay Bridge? It goes under the water, comes back up again, goes under the water, comes back up again. So I finally wouldn't move forward until I said that to him, right? And he says, guess what? Wiring harnesses do the same thing. He says, how many times have you been out with me, you see a car completely ripped apart, somebody's looking for a bad thing? I said, all the time. I see cars taken apart, headliners out and everything else, right? And he says, Chesapeake Bay Bridge. He said, what you want to do is find a wire. So you got the wire right here on the ground side. It disappears. You find the wire again, say right here. He wants me to walk the meter now. Remember what I said? I'm here now, right? And we got about 4.5 volts here now because we got 10.26 here. Everybody follow me? What he wants me to do now, I want to take this lead and bring it down to here. Walk down. Take one step, another step, another step. So I got a lead here and lead here now. Everybody can see what the problem is, right? So my meter is going to read 0 because I still got 4.5 volts here, 4.5 volts there. What's the difference between 4.5 and 4.5? 0. Now what he wants me to do, he wants me to leave this one on and find where the wire comes out of the harness again, where I see it again. I see it again right here. Everybody see what I'm doing now? I'm still going to see 0 still, right? Now what's going to happen is I'm going to see it again right here. I'm still seeing 0. And then I come over here. I got one lead here. I got one lead here. I got 4.5 here, and I got 0 there. Boom, 4.5. I'm going to go on my meter now, right? You know how many times he did that to me? I mean, literally hundreds and hundreds of times. And he'd say, take that panel off right there. I said, just one time, make it so it's not there, you know? It was very, very intelligent move he was doing. And everybody in this room knows how much time it wasted ripping stuff apart, opening harnesses up and all that stuff. He was a very, very, very methodical, common sense guy. He found ways of being very, very, very efficient. And he passed them on. But it's kind of funny. I didn't know 2 people that studied on him because he hated human beings. I always said, I guess that meant I wasn't really a human being then and stuff, you know. He said to me all the time, he said, you know, people lie to you and they bullshit you. He said, I like dogs. If a dog doesn't like you, he'll just bite you, you know. But, you know, he's very, 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 the way he thought, the methodical way, you know. If you did what I just said, every book's going to tell you, every factory's going to tell you to take the whole car apart, remove the headliner and all that stuff. You know, you got to put that stuff back together again without noises and stuff now too, right? So it's very, very methodical ways of checking this stuff. Use your meter. You know, everybody said to me all the time, if I had one of them lab scopes, man, you have a chance, you don't have a chance whatsoever to master a lab scope unless you really understand your DB1. When Joe Woods ran around for 3 days, he wrote in that article, I watched this guy work with his trusty DB1 for 3 days and solved it. He said, I fixed the unfixable vehicles. What are unfixable vehicles? Everybody wasn't using their head on what they're doing, that's all. You know? So we're going to do now, we're going to talk about what I said, the 5 whys and stuff. When you find something wrong, okay, a perfect example of this, don't just sit there. Sometimes we get ourselves in trouble. We find something wrong, we fix it, and we give it back to them. Did you fix the problem, or did you fix the result of the problem? Now, you were talking about that vehicle, when we're talking about the brake and stuff, or the bottom line is that maybe you're going to find something and fix it temporarily, but is that just a defective part that went bad because of something else, though? Like that pump and stuff also, okay? And what I mean by that is what you're staring at may not be the problem. When you people leave here tonight, if you turn your key on the on position and don't crank the vehicle over, okay, what's going to happen? You're going to get a 2 or 5 second prime of the fuel pump, right? Okay? You got to know your opponent. If you know your opponent, we see how much faster you can get cars very, very accurately fixed. My point being is, if you didn't recognize this car, ASC Composite Vehicle 1 from a long time ago, the alarm clock, I call it. Remember I said sometimes you could have a problem in 2 of the funnels? And the bottom line is you're never going to get fuel and spark if you don't have an alarm clock, I call it. And I call it alarm clock for a reason. You might want to call it a crankshaft sensor or whatever, but this car doesn't have a crankshaft sensor. It's got a Hall effect switch in the distributor. So whatever signal is being driven into your PCM that's telling your PCM that you want to get going. Tonight, when you turn your key, a signal's going to be sent in your PCM. That 85%. The 15% is what's the name of your signal, where's it come from? Okay, but everybody's got that. Everybody's got the 85%, okay? So here's what's going to happen. Put the key in the on position. You put the key in the on position, what's going to happen is the computer is the power from the ignition, and the computer is going to complete the path to ground on pin number 41. That's going to become a magnet. It's going to pull this down, and the pump's going to run. The computer is going to turn its head and look over at pin number 21. If it doesn't see anything at 21, what it's going to do, it's going to release pin number 41, and the pump's going to go off. If you crank the vehicle, keep cranking the vehicle, all right, perfect way of saving time. I've gotten so many emails from people about this movement. You crank a vehicle, it won't start. You go to a flow chart, you go to factory flow chart, you got 17 pages of information to go through, and it says go check the crankshaft sensor. I would like to grab the guy who wrote that, grab by his tie, and say, you go check it. I got to remove 43 things to get down to that thing, right? If you're intelligent enough and understand the circuit enough, look what I just told you. This will work on any vehicle out there. If it turns out that it's very hard to get down to the crankshaft sensor, I want to know if it's okay or not, crank the vehicle over. While you're cranking it over, monitor the fuel pump, which is usually relatively easy to do with a relay or power stuff. If you're cranking it and the fuel pump goes off in 2 to 5 seconds while you're cranking it, yeah, you got to go find your crankshaft sensor now. But if you're not losing your fuel pump operation while you're cranking it, right, there's no need whatsoever to waste all that time and go to the crankshaft. Any car is going to do that. The only ones that didn't fall in that category were the old Toyotas that had the vane airflow meter on the thing. The vane had to move on that thing for the pump, but 99% of cars work on that same theory. I would say I save more hours, that little tiny thing I just told you, over the years than almost anything else. I know it's not the crankshaft sensor. Simple reason is I'm not losing my fuel pump at that point, okay? Now go into a circuit now. And I want to say how can you lose fuel also if you don't have the spark? I grabbed what's considered to be, according to the techs I talked to, they say this is the hardest one out there. This is an old GM system, an HEI, and it's still today. It's still probably one of the most complicated ones. I want everybody to visualize over here is your module, ignition module, and over here is your PCM. This thing here is called a reference high signal with circuit number 430, purple and white wire. And what it did was you cranked the vehicle over 05, 05, 05, 05 from the Hall effect switch, and it went over there. It smacked the computer around a little bit and said, hey, he wants to get going. And then the computer's job was to send a signal from the PCM back to the module again and hit the base of the transistor inside there and make and break the primary. Nobody got me so far? Now there's two things here I want to show you, and this is the unique 15%. What happened was, when it was cranking, it was under 375 to 400 RPM. The signal coming this way, called EST signal, this thing was 0,700 millivolts, 0,700 millivolts. What happened right here when it went from this to this, the car started up. Once it went over 375 to 400, this signal went from 0 to 5. I want to show you something now, though. Look how this lines up. Look how this lines up. Look how this doesn't line up. That's the computer saying, now we got the car started. Now it's okay if we send advanced timing. So when you crank a vehicle, we get it started, it was electronically forced into base timing. All right, so what have we seen a million times? Somebody put a cheaper module on a damn thing, or a computer, a rebuilt computer didn't work right or something like that. You know how many times I would see 0505 on both of them, and they would line up perfect, no matter what the RPM was? You have no computer advancement there. So. Now, it could have been something else, like the bypass line disconnected or something like that. But the bottom line is that everybody's got their own 15%. And now, one more thing about this one now, look at this, look at this injector. And look at this injector here. This is called a rising edge, and this is called a falling edge. Now, if it's a high-end car, it might be called a leading and a trailing. I don't care if you call it Bob or Harry. As long as you understand that one side's going to go up, one side's going to go down. And this is a part that I find a lot of times the tech stops short here and doesn't understand the whole story. Let me zoom in on it now. Okay? And take notice, it's the same identical signal. And I just took it and I spread it out a little bit more. Look at the falling edge right here, and look how it lines up perfect with the pulsing of the injector. So guess what's in that computer? There's a program that says when to see the falling edge of that signal, that's when we're going to operate the injector. So now think about it. If you don't have that alarm clock, you're not going to get any fuel injection pulse then. And that's still today almost all university across the board. So a lot of times, I don't know about you, it's a lot easier for me to get to an injector than anything else. So when they say check the noise light, if you look at a noise light and that thing's blinking, you have a crankshaft sensor then. Do you know how much time, again, you know how much time you just saved? Right? You got to save a ton of time right there. You'll never, you want to prove it yourself, go to the vehicle, unplug the crankshaft sensor, and go up the injector and see what you have. You'll have no flashing of the noise light whatsoever because it doesn't know when to do it. That's problem one. Problem two is some people say, you know, erratically my car starts to really run bad and stuff. And I look at a lab scope and I see the injectors, man, like pumping like hell. Well, you know, you got to understand, computers are really smart, but they're really dumb also. They don't even know how to do what they're told to do, right? So this one here was told, a falling edge, we're going to work the injector. What would happen if you had a glitch in the signal and you had to drop out of the signal every once in a while? Like a loose crankshaft sensor or something, or, you know, railroad tracks or something like that. You hit something rough and the sensor jiggles. The way it happens, you get a drop out of the signal. So this falling edge is a good one. How if the falling edge was right here in the middle of the signal? Guess what's going to do? The injector's going to go again. I got cars that say, oh, man, I put a new set of injectors in it, or put four new computers in it, still doing it. But you don't understand, you know, that's a strategy that is built into the program. You know, go backwards and see how it was programmed and stuff then.
If you didn't have power supply to the injectors though,
No.
if you used the noise light, wouldn't that throw you in the wrong direction?
Well, it could, but here's the problem is most times you're never going to have power supply just to the injectors. So what I do is I look at what else that power. A lot of times your ignition coils and your injectors at least. And so if I keep saying the same thing, all problems I have, I say, you know, what do these things have in common? And if I find it in common, so very rarely will I ever get pulled that way because if I got a universal across the board, like an ASD relay on a Chrysler product, if I got a voltage drop across an ASD relay, I'm going to have a problem across the board with all power supply. You know, and there's some cool things out there too, like. If you don't know, ASD relays on Chryslers and Jeeps, that's the main power supply for everything, literally everything, okay? Ford's got a thing called an EEC power relay, same identical thing, except for one thing though. What happens on the EEC power relays is they don't supply power to the primary side of the ignition usually. So if I know that, I don't have to go find a relay at all. All I got to do is do a voltage drop, you know, from a coil to an injector. And I'll find if I got different voltage there, and I know it's got to be from the relay then. You know, you go to like Chrysler. I love Chrysler's test procedure for an ASD relay. As long as they keep that test procedure, I would never be out of work. Put your finger on the relay and turn the key on and see if it clicks. You know, you can lose 2 or 3 volts there and still get a click. You know, you got to understand, like that was what I just said to you, that's a perfect idea of knowing the 15%. Everybody's got the same thing, but do they supply power to everything or just some things? So I see if they have in common. It's a good point, though. Okay? And here I'm trying to show you what it does right here. Here's an injector, here's an injector, here's the alarm clock. I'm laying them on top of each other. This is a 6-cylinder vehicle. I'm looking at one injector. Count the amount of pulses here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So every time that one pulse comes, each one of these pulses is going to make one of the injectors work. And what you said also, see this, quote unquote, see this crap here? That crap is because that's also the coil. That's the power supply for the coil. So I'm picking up noise there. You know how many times people stop right here and try to find out what is that all about and stuff, you know? You got to go and look up the wiring schematic and say, okay, I'm seeing what's happening here. And take notice where it's at, in between the pulse right there. So that's very, very, very rhythmic. That's the coil is firing right there. All right? Here's a perfect example of did you find a problem or not, okay? This is one of my students' mom's vehicles. And take a notice again one more time. I try to get old equipment out off the wall sometimes and show people, maybe if you really got that piece of equipment out, that's a Snap-on counselor. That thing's got to be 25, 30 years old. And it can hold at least 4 or 5 coffee cups on it too, you know, when it's up against the wall. And here's a very, very powerful thing that McKenna taught me. When you find something wrong with a vehicle, don't call the customer up and try to sell the job. Oh, okay, thank me. Let me write that down. That sounds like a brilliant move. All right. I said, well, is there any more you want to tell me about this? Yep. Think of another test you can do and see if it points to the same part. People ask me all the time, why is your comeback ratio so low? Because of what I just told you. Think about it. If you do a second test and it points to the same part, you got a pretty damn good idea. You nailed it, right? And then when he told me if there's any way in the world you can do a third test and it points to the bad part, you're almost dead on. So everybody said, yeah, it takes a lot of time. Let's talk about the time of taking something apart and replacing it and then not fixing it. Well, let's talk about the time for a comeback. So does this take a little more time? Yep. But does it really cut your time down? Yeah. If you don't have enough time to do it right the first time, where are you going to get the time for the comeback? All right, that's what I say all the time. So here's a perfect example. This vehicle is misfiring. So the first thing we did was we put this back by the tailpipe, like I told you, and we took notices. It went out like this, and then it kept on going very, very dramatic like this. So we got a misfire. Okay, there's the first thing. Okay. Second thing is, what we did is put a secondary ignition scope on the thing. And if you know anything at all about secondary ignition, which I did at TSD big event a year ago, this is called the fire line right here, the one coming up, the firing KV. And very simply, the harder it is to fire the cylinder, the higher that line is going to go. What drives that line up, higher voltage, is lean air fuel ratio and high compression. So take the opposite of that, and that's going to make it lower. Low compression or a slightly rich mixture is going to be easier to fire. You got that one piece of rope. If you look very carefully on this thing, if it goes up too high, you're shortening your burn time. Goes down too low, burn time is going to lengthen. A very good basic thing to write down. Your burn time, everybody asks, what should my firing KV be? And I said, your burn time should be 1.0 to 1.5. Okay, yeah, I heard you that, but that's not what I asked you. I asked you about my firing line. And I said, the burn time should be 1.0 to 1.5. The reason why I keep on saying that is because whatever your firing KV is, as long as you're 1.0 to 1.5 burn time, remember I said one piece of rope? So wherever you're at on a firing KV is good if you're 1.0 to 1.5. And if anybody in front of me right now is driving a car 7 years old or newer, 1.0 to 1.2. But thank God you already know why that, though, because I talked about it earlier. All right? Your cars are running cleaner and cleaner and cleaner because of EPA standards, right? Which means they're leaner. So the reason why you're 1.0 to 1.2 on a newer car is your firing KV, like I said, on them Chrysler products, really burning everything up, because very simple is that it's so lean. So I see people sometimes, the burn time is 2.0, 2.4, 2.6, and usually my first thing out of my mouth to them, did somebody put a set of plugs in this thing recently? And they said, yeah. Either didn't gap them, or the most common thing I see, they put platinum plugs in it, and the car didn't come to the factory with platinum plugs. Platinum's a better conductor. You made an easier path. The firing KV can weigh down, and the burn time extended. You just paid a lot of money to cause a misfire. That's really what it comes down to. So just because they're more expensive doesn't mean they're better and stuff. But if the car came with platinum plugs, you got to put them in because very simply is the total amount of resistance what comes into play here. So, yeah?
You know, on that note, I've seen, I don't think it's just that. I think some of the Bosch flats, the ones with the single electrode, seem to have issues keeping their insulators clean. There's something in the design of those that doesn't work with a lot of engines. It's not just that they're misfiring and creating a deposit.
Nope.
There's something funny about those that doesn't really work.
So many factors involved with that. You got to look. You got to know what's causing it. Why is it doing it and stuff? Okay. So this vehicle here, look at that firing KV. See how low that is right there? All right. So I'm gonna take a guess, man. What I said, I know I got a misfire. Well, I said I got a misfire, and I also got a misfire due to low compression. The reason why, because look how far the KV's down, right? So I haven't put one wrench or socket on the vehicle yet. I got a pretty good idea. It's cylinder number 5, all right, and we got some kind of a problem with no compression. So how if I do something else? It's kind of funny. I'm going to show you in a couple minutes about a relative compression test and stuff. Well, look at what they had way 30 years ago on this machine. They had a thing called cranking amp bar graft. As you crank the vehicle over, the machine will automatically short out the primer and won't let it start. And what it did is it gives you readings here of the current as you're cranking it over. Cylinder number 1, 175, 170, 169, 187, 130, 168. And if you guys know your meter, a shop tool that shows you the average starter draw, if you add all 6 of those together and divide it by 6, that's what your meter would read. I don't want to do that. I want to see individual. How much current's being drawn by a cylinder. So less compression, 130, less current draw. So look what I just did, 3 different ways. One is that piece of paper. The second is looking at the secondary, and the third is looking at this cranking bar. We're down now to, it is number 5 cylinder, okay? As soon as I'm ready to start ripping this apart, I said, stop a minute. Let's go one more. We did a cylinder leakage test. And if I had any hair in my head, well, back to the tailpipe would have been blowing in the wind. So what we got now, we got an exhaust valve that's not seating and is letting a lot of air come out now. The key thing here, all this testing on novice people took less than probably 20 minutes or 25 minutes. Now when we put tools on this thing, it is number 5 cylinder and it's on the exhaust side. You're not guessing at all, right? Now, they're ready to start going now. Okay, what are you going to do? Well, we're going to pull the cylinder head off, Mr. Morton. We're going to send it down to the machine shop and do a valve job. Good idea. Way to go, guys. Well, oh, man, fantastic. Oh, Mr. Morton, we hate when you talk like that, man. We know you're up to something, man. I said, we're not up to something, man. Come on, man. You guys got it nailed, man. Let's go. It's his mom's car, man. We got to get this back for mom. Soccer mom needs her van, right? All right, Mr. Morton. All right, you're up to, what do you want to tell? What are you trying to tell us? All right, well, here's what I'm thinking. I think the other cylinder probably went down the same road with the same amount of time. Why one side? Why one cylinder? All right, Mr. Moore, what do you want us to do now? I don't know. You just got to start taking the head off, man. Oh, go ahead. No, all right. What do you want us to do now? Injector flow test. What I suggested they do. Guess what? Cylinder number 5 injector was flowing about 1/3 the amount of fuel the other ones were, which in turn is driving it lean, right? And what's that going to do? Think about your torches. How are you going to blow it through the metal? What you do, you put the silane on, and you start adding the oxygen, you get it hotter and hotter and hotter. So the leaner you go with your torches, the hotter it gets, right? That cylinder's running so lean, if you want to see what that valve looks like, right there, get Jim Holman's engine repair book, and in the chapter that talks about valves, is a picture of that valve. That valve looks like someone took a torch and actually cut a section of the valve right out. So now if they did a valve job on this and put a whole new cylinder head on there and quote-unquote fixed it, what's going to happen in no time? You're going to do it again. Now my point there is I'm not stupid. I understand what you guys are up against. The customer said, well, gee, well, we keep on going and going and going. If the customer says, no, we just take care of that valve, okay, I still think we haven't found a problem yet. All right, so a lot of times it's pretty damn easy once you're down there. A simple thing, if I got 3 or 4 burnt valves, 2 on this side, 2 on this side, I'd say, you know what, we got something going on. That's what it is. But you know what, one side and the other ones are very, very good. All right, exactly what the thing turned out to be. And this is going to be more and more and more of a problem. One of the jobs I was talking to people about during a break, you got so many carbon problems, it's unbelievable. So, which we're going to talk about. Everybody understand that? Key thing about this, take the extra time. We always say, well, I don't have the time for this. You don't have the time not to do this. You know what the real problem is? When you're not charging for diagnostics, this is why I said I'm being paid for this. I'm being paid to do this. I got authorization for 2 hours labor. You know, it's not like, oh, how can we charge them for this? You tell them up front, right? Create another business within your business to do this stuff, a different business, a different labor rate. You know, you got a diagnostic charge. You know, this crap of, you know, we'll check your car for free for a check engine light and stuff. They were all the cars I got eventually. Now, I say to people all the time, you know, how come you come to me first? So you're really expensive. You know, I said, okay. Is that why you didn't come to me? Well, yeah. Okay. Let me ask you something. We're going to get your lawn cut. 2 people are going to give you an estimate of cut your lawn. One's $5 an hour, one's $50 an hour. Who are you going to get? That's a pretty stupid. Well, who would you get? The guy $5 an hour. Okay. Would you ask him anything else? No, he's going to cut my lawn, for God's sake, you know. How's the guy $5 an hour has a pair of scissors? All right, how's the guy at $50 an hour has got a gang mower? You know, who's going to be cheaper? My point is that if you're doing this stuff and you're getting experience in it, right, you're going through this stuff pretty fast. So everybody came to me. Believe me, they didn't come to me first. You know, they came to me. I was like number 7, 8, or something. I said, you know, don't bring me to the repair orders to have already. I'll get a hernia carrying. You know, we're going to start fresh. And things like this. See how I pinpoint this thing down? Before we put a wrench on it, man, we got it down to the cylinder and what side of the cylinder. Okay? And one of the things in the back that I'm going to get to that we're going to start getting involved with, all these pressure transducer readings now you're seeing, we're running compression tests. That's pinpointing all this stuff now. All right? Really, really good stuff, which I'll come back and do another class on that. Here's my valve. All right, I talk about this all the time. I said to somebody doing a break about this. I did this for a reason because I started talking about people about carbon problems. I don't get it. But yeah, I take this thing here that I built myself. Or I took it out. I tell you what, I took it out of a car. You know, I said to my wife one day, I said, do me a favor. Next time you go to the $50 store, could you get me a sponge? So she calls it the dollar store, but every time she goes there, it gets like $49 worth of crap. So I call it the $50 store. Okay, and the end result, I took a sponge and I wrapped some wire ties around it. And what happens with an injector, right? Injector's sitting here or squirting in, right? Well, everybody can get it now. What's going to happen with the fuel? Somebody was talking about, like, start the car, the hardly moves and all that stuff. If the fuel is not getting into the cylinder, I said, well, the injector is working and everything, it's pulsing and everything. The injector can work all at once. Is it getting into the fuel, into the combustion chamber? Pierre said earlier about, you know, a 5-gas analyzer is going to tell you all this stuff. This is really, really, really a common problem today. And what happens is if you have it here, it's also going to be a combustion chamber. Now, what am I going to do now? A perfect thing to do would be a cranking compression test. Okay? Again, I have fast, easier ways. The milkman diagnostics, I call them. I'm going to go out and do easy things first. You do a relative compression test. All right? And what it'll do is you get carbon buildup. What will happen is that the carbon will be in the combustion chamber also. Put an amp probe around a power supply wire, right? Everybody's showing these things today, but nobody's giving you good numbers. Everybody says, as long as they're all okay, okay? But they can all be okay the same, but they can all be all high or all low. I traditionally find if I got a car cranking over, and I have 140 to 160 amps while it's cranking, not on the initial one, 140 to 160, I'm okay. I don't have carbon buildup. If I got 185, 190 across the board, they're all even, right? Everybody says, oh, it's okay, they're all even. How if they're all heavily carbon? Or how about somebody put a timing belt on a vehicle wrong or timing chain on wrong, and they're all low? So what I'll show you, what I mean by that is that I'm going to go forward here a minute and go back to this. Okay, here's a relative compression test. I'll do 50 of these to your one cranking test. I'm going to go back. Don't twist. I'm going to go back. And I want to just show you this, though. Is that what's happening here, I'm putting an amp probe around a starter wire, and I'm cranking it over. Most times what I do, I put my foot all the way down on the gas pedal, put it in clear flood mode. It's not going to start, right? Here's my initial draw right here, all right? And then what happens when you go here, each one of these humps is one of the cylinders. So if it turns out that they're all even, but they're all up here someplace, all right, I said traditionally what I find, about 140 to 160 amps going across the board there is okay. If they're all low or all high, everybody's saying as long as they're even, I don't go by that. And what I do is when I try to show people this and learn it, I take a spark plug out. So I'm showing you that every one of those humps is the same cylinder, right? Every fourth or every sixth or every eighth is the same cylinder. Everybody see what I did there? I took one plug out. Now you see very simply every third, there's 3 good ones and 1 low one. So let's say you had that burn exhaust valve on another vehicle. Now we didn't even do this back then. It's a simple test, man. You're putting an amp probe on a starter wire. I said, I was out on that blacktop. It was 22 to 28 cars every day. I'm out doing simple tests like this. And I'm going to bring it in and hand you an RO and say, my initial findings are, and then you start going into the pinpoint test. Usually when I hand an RO to my guy, I did the general test and I have the right funnel. Literally in minutes, I got the right funnel. Now he's got the job now. He got the interview sheet, and he knows what funnel he's in. He's going to start doing his pinpoint testing. There's a perfect example of it right there. And then you can do this a lot of people are doing this wrong, I think. You're putting the wrong time bases in, and the end result is that you start cramping it up like that and stuff. What you got to learn is you got to do it on good cars. You got to do it on good cars and see what's actually happening, okay? I'll go back here a second. Okay, here's what could happen. And I kind of weird. This slide right here, I just had to show this to 5 Ford factory troubleshooters that have been working for Ford for years and years and years, and they've never even seen this thing. You got to be very careful if you're looking at something as a problem. You know, that's actual no problem right there. That's an actual good vehicle. Now, look at it real carefully. All right. Here's my fuel trim. What's happening right here, this black line right here, everybody had the old snap-on brick, you could film a movie. We hit the Y button, you start filming. Well, that's the line right there, okay? This red line right here is the numbers here. I can take this red line, I can move it back and forth and come up with numbers. And what I'm trying to show you is that we felt the problem and then hit the Y button, okay? So here's the Y button here. So look what happened here. The computer pulled fuel, 10%. When it pulled fuel, the O2 sensor went very low, which it's going to do, right? The mode of operation was 1.6 TPS voltage and 65 mile per hour, okay? This car was pinging and knocking. And the customer told me that he can make it stop. When it does, he can make it stop. How do you make it stop? I back off the throttle. Okay, I can understand that. Or I go down harder on it. That seemed odd. Okay? Here's what happened. This is called MPG mode. It's a mode of operation on Ford products, and what they do, they have it, then they get away with it, and they bring it back. So don't worry that it's a 92. This could be a 2002 still doing it. What Ford does, anybody's always trying to do, always trying to get their number in that back window up a little higher, make it look better. So if you put modes of operation in it, you can play with those numbers. When this car is going down the road, and only the criteria is steady miles per hour and steady TPS voltage. And then it pulls 10% fuel, and it's still going to run okay, but save fuel. Make sense? Because see here, look at the 2 bottom ones. It didn't do it over here because that wasn't steady. As soon as it stabilized, then it went into that mode. Okay? But why is it pinging and knocking though? Because it went leaner, right? Okay, but wait a minute though. I did this job in like 2002, and this is a 1992. He had it, bought it new. 10 years took for this to happen. Carbon buildup. What it did is, by pulling at 10%, when it had the carbon in there, it put it over the edge and started pinging and knocking. That's why if you put his foot down or back, on or off, it pulled out of mode of operation. It was okay. So we did a carbon clean on this thing, and how did I know that? By doing that crank and compression test. That crank and compression test showed we got much higher compression. You know, a car gets 10 years old, it's not going to build compression. It's not going to get better. You know, every time I go on to somebody, they say, I got a car that does this, this, and that. So, okay, you know, how's this, how's that, how's the compression? Great. Now, wait a minute, no, I want numbers, man. Well, the book says 165, it's like 185. That's not great. You know, you don't get better compression as the car gets older, for God's sake, you know. And what's happening is it's a carbon buildup. So what happened when they kill the fuel, if you put 10,000 of your cylinder head, you raise compression and heat, right? You don't cut the cylinder heads, but put carbon there, it does the same thing, right? So it's driving the temperature up. You're all going to start seeing a lot more of this stuff. And when we go to direct injection, that's the only downside about direct injection. There's a tendency to build more carbon if it's not on the open road. So you're going to see more and more carbon problems on direct injection also. I want everybody, that's a real important part of this course. If you leave tonight and never do what I'm going to tell you right now, no offense, you kind of almost wasted your night. I'm going to give you a little homework assignment. All right, start looking at scan tool information. Traditionally, all across the country, what I see is people look at scan tool information. They look at this, then they look at this, then they look at this, and look at, tunnel vision and stuff. Put it together. Start really starting to put things together, okay? And you'll start seeing patterns and stuff. Number one is that I think the most important input still today is vacuum, okay? But I never put a vacuum gauge on a car. Well, you just contradicted yourself. You just said the most important thing. Here's the reason why I don't do that. Because basically, I'm probably going to have to disconnect something to get a vacuum reading. I want the car where it's supposed to be, number one. Number two, I might tap into bank 2 to get vacuum, and maybe the computer is looking at bank 1. I might have an intake manifold problem or something where the computer is looking at. So what I'm going to do different, start taking notice that a lot of cars today have a mass airflow sensor, and they also have a map sensor. And most times that map sensor won't be called a map sensor. It'll be called a diagnostic monitor. I want you to start tomorrow, put the scan tool on vehicles and key on engine off. Start looking for map HG or map VAC. All right, and when you key on engine off, you're going to see barometric pressure. Down in Philadelphia area, it's about 30. I believe this is probably the same around here. Okay, so what's going to happen, key on engine off, this is going to read about 30. And then very simply, tend to do what I hear all the time. Say, I think I found the problem. What's the problem? The vacuum is very low. It's 11.8. Okay, round that off to 12 and subtract 12 from 30. That's manifold vacuum. Okay, so look, this car is idling right now. Look, 0.51 TPS voltage, 4.5 pulse width, 4.5 pulse width, bank 1 and bank 2. Little diagnostic tip, not perfect on all cars. About 85-90% of all cars will fall on what I'm going to tell you right now. Cars warmed up and idling, 1 millisecond per liter. My truck is a 3.7 liter truck. I looked at the pulse width of my injectors. When it's warmed up and idle, you can see about 3.69 milliseconds. If I start looking at my truck and saw 4.5, then I probably go to my fuel trim and see positive 15, positive 12% then too. You'll see bigger engines and small engines will fall out of that a little bit. Most engines, 1 millisecond per liter is a good reading on a thing. Now what happened? We got high vacuum, about 8 tenths of vacuum. We got pulse width is idling, right? And now I hit the gas pedal. Now what happens is 1.66 TPS voltage right there, 12.2, 12.2, and by the way, a real good thing, should they be different? You know how many times I've done this and they're different? They're going at the same load, right? That's very characteristic of a vacuum leak on one side of the manifold or something, So they got pulse width went up, right? And look at here, 26.1. Subtract 26.1 now from 30. There's your vacuum. I gotta sit there and I gotta scratch my head a lot of times when I watch techs taking a car out with a vacuum gauge duct taped to the windshield. Trying to drive the car and look at that and stuff. Why don't you just take the car out and drive it, film the movie, and come back and look what you got? See, we just put 4 things together there, and we see how they relate to each other. And you know what you're going to see? I guarantee you, within 1 week, probably the remainder of this week, if you do what I just said, you're going to find a map sensor bad. How many times I've got 3 or 4 cars lined up, key on engine off, and I look at it, and I said, wow, I would have never thought that bay there is 3,000 feet higher than the rest of them because the barometric pressure is way off. Now, which one of these cars has a drivability issue? Oh, what a surprise. It's the one that thinks it's 3,000 feet above sea level. All right, so key on, engine off, good basic reading. That's why it drives me nuts all the time when I hear these people say, you need a factory scan to all the fixed cars today. No, you need to know your opponent. And you need to be able to just look at what normal is and get used to what normal is. You know, it's not tough to do this stuff, to look at good cars. All right, get to know what the barometric pressure is and stuff. All right.
Just going back to the barometric pressure, so the normal reading, let's say, is 29, so you take 29 minus 26, and you got 3.
If 26, you better not be around here any place, or up in the Catskills or something. Yeah, with that, subtract that. The barometer is always going to be the same. You take that number, subtract it from the first number. So that was 4 inches of vacuum then, because I was into it then. So the vacuum goes down. Right? So the other one's thing. So it's really cool. It works. When the barometric pressure is, we always want to check it first. So think about that, though. If that barometric pressure was off, let's say it was key on engine off was 25. You nail the throttle, right? The computer's going to be adding fuel based off those numbers. Now, it's really, really good thing to look at and stuff. I can't tell you. There's a perfect example. If I wrote down how many times I found that when someone flew me 1,200 miles or 1,500 miles, you know, and I said, God, you know, why didn't he know that, you know? So I had to write some crap down there or something. I wrote down what I found, probably 75% of the time. If I wrote down what I found, somebody would have got fired. You know, simple stuff. Key on, engine off, get used to what good is and stuff. You know, and I'm looking, I'm kind of your motorcycle and stuff. All the stuff is coming into motorcycles and everything else, man. It's all there now, same stuff, you know. You know, fuel delivery is based off of that. All I want to tell you about this here, everybody realize there's 7 mandatory things on every freeze frame? So me being dumber than hell, what I did, I made a long time ago, I made a decision, I should really, really, really study these 7 things. Now there's really 8 up there. Why that? There's map and mass error. You only have to look at the one that's really being used there. But most times, like I said, a map and mass error will be on the car. So a lot of times there's 8. And the one that I hardly ever see anybody really put any time into is this one right here, the engine load. Anybody use that? How do you use it? Give me your thought about it.
First off, you want to see what's actually, where you command that.
Sorry?
Where is the motor, you know, is it trying to go max load on it, or is it trying to, idle?
Okay. What's a good number?
For what?
Idle. Warmed up idle.
You're between 5 and 10.
Okay. Anybody else? Good? Bad? You work a lot of high gas mileage vehicles, right? Better, like a lot of.
Cars between 75 and 200,000 miles.
Okay. Anybody? This is something that I joke all the time about it. It's a free tool. It's a free diagnostic tool. Okay. Now, what he just said is good numbers. I'm going to tell you what I'm going to tell you right now. It's about volumetric efficiency. What it is. Okay. And this is not new. All right. In 1979, I used this stuff all the time when I was troubleshooting for GM. But back then it was called the LV8. All right, the low value of approximately 8 inputs. And what this is not something you can pick up, take off the car and hold in your hand. This is a computer calculation. So if one of the things in a computer calculation is bad, it's going to screw this up. This is something. I'm going to show you something right now. This is something. And it's kind of funny. Last night, here, I tell you, I had a guy sitting right here with a Mac or Macco tool. I said, we're not going to send his kid to private school because this is free. We don't have to buy anything. I don't know if he liked that or not, but but the bottom line is, this is pretty cool, though. You're good what you said, but let me show you something now. All right. Power band. Everybody know what a power band on an engine is? I mean, that engine was designed to run basically at this RPM. Most cars today are 2,500, about 22 to 2,500 power band. The reason why they do that way you can idle the vehicle and you can also pass people. But it's most efficient there. If you look at a vehicle and go down the road in your high gear and you lock up, or your fifth gear or manual transmission, and you look at your tach, you're going to be about that range right there. Okay. Now, what do you think would happen if we get a new car, a performance vehicle? It's got the ability to really it's got the power band moves, right? So now, what do you think is going to happen to that load number if you got some type of performance vehicle? Take this power band now, grab this, and cut and paste it, and put it here. So the guy's got more power up there at 3,300 or so. Aren't you further away from idle now? So what do you think is going to happen to the number you just said? if it's a car, it's some type of performance vehicle. So let me tell you what I look at. I see single digits, like you said. I don't think I've ever seen 5. I've seen 7. I think the lowest I ever saw. All right? And I see up to the highest I ever saw is 31. And on a good vehicle, that's the key thing, on a good vehicle, that just taught me a lot about that vehicle. If I get low numbers, I know this car probably get high gas miles, and no kind of power, right? And I get a vehicle that's 22, 24, 26 or something like that. I know I got some type of performance vehicle here. It's not going to get good gas mileage, but that's why they did it. Now this is a really cool thing now. Get into either one of those cars and drive them while you're watching the numbers. The car that you're talking about, the 5 or 10, as you put your foot down, the number's going to go higher. All right? I'm not saying that nail the throttle, just drive it kind of normal. The car that's like 25, 28, as you start to accelerate it, the number's going to go down first. And think about it. What's happening, you're moving towards power. As you're accelerating, taking the RPM up, you're moving more toward the power band now, right? Anybody ever see a funny car, dragster idle? They're not idle very good, right? They're way far away from the power bands, right? So what they're actually doing with this number is they're keeping the car running efficient by calculated load. So pretty cool when someone comes to me and says, you know, I'm not getting ready to do gas mileage and stuff. I know for a fact that that car, when I look at it, is usually 23, 24 or something like that. Yeah, okay, but you wanted some power though too, didn't you? It'll probably get decent mileage, but that's telling me something. You know, why is that so important? You know how many times that was my additive gauge thing I looked at? So you like said, I can find most of them are 9 or 10. I go to that same kind of car and now I'm seeing 19. There's one of the critical input sensors is way off. So you know what I've done numerous times? I go a good vehicle, I'm good at this, I can screw them up. I unplug a vacuum hose, I cause a misfire or something like that, and I watch what happens to that load number. And the really cool part about this, if you put some time into this is something, if you let it die here, you'll never be able to use it. This is on every freeze frame. All right? I am an expert witness in court cases on a regular basis, and this is one of the things I show a lot of time. I see a car that's showing, 87 miles per hour and a 92% load, and the guy's sitting there trying to convince everybody that he was just driving along normal when he rear-ended that car. My job is not to say that he was driving recklessly. My job is to document what that means. Right? And usually what happens is, I've done it so long now, when they call me into the courtroom, and usually the other attorney, I've already got him a couple times, usually they want to approach the bench, and they don't want me to even say anything anymore. Because this is like the black box in a plane. You can actually really look at this stuff. The cool part about this, I'm saying, is it's free. You can put a little bit of time into it. That's all. You got to look at it. Road test the vehicle normal. And instead, go to some other vehicles, and you'll start seeing the numbers are higher, and they'll go down a little bit. Now, they'll go back up because you're going to the other side of the power band. All right, it's a very, very, very good investment of time here. Very good investment of time. All right. Fuel trim, that's another one I always go all the time. Fuel trim is the most awesome damn thing I've ever seen if you know how to use it right. All right. And everybody's looking, well, I got 20% positive. Who cares? I got 80% more to go. No, you don't. It's 30%. Plus or minus 30% is the max on the long term. I don't look at the short term. I was going to respond recently on ITN about something. I'm so sick and tired of hearing it, but every time I do, I just give up and stuff, What's your name?
Mike.
Mike, stand up a minute. And I'll never tell anybody anything else from power. Come here a minute. 1.5 million years ago, General Motors had a thing called integrator block learn. This is not new. Integrator block learn. As McKenna said to me, he said, you're not very smart. I got to think of something you'll remember. How many T's are in block learn? And I said, I'm pretty smart, man. There ain't no T's in block learn. He goes, oh, that's good, man, good. How many T's are in integrator? 2, okay. From this point forward, he said to me, integrator means temporary fuel change, the T's. That's how he got me to remember it. Here we are, 150 years later, I still remember. Now watch this now. The new system is plus or minus 100%. The old system was 128, was normal. Higher than 128, adding fuel. Lower than 128, subtracting fuel. You know what I just read recently from a factory manual? Take the long term and short term. And they showed an example. They had positive 18% long term and negative 8% short-term. They said to deduct one from the other. All right, and how about it? Where in God's name did you ever get that at, for God's sake, right? Watch this. Mike, was it? Okay, he's long-term fuel trim. Okay, I'm short-term fuel trim. Okay, we're lined up. We're both at 0% right now. The computer looks at the O2 sensor, doesn't like what it sees. It looks a little too lean. It tells me to move first. Okay, move over. Right, I'm going up now. I'm positive 5%, positive 7%, positive 8%, positive 10%. Whoa, whoa, whoa! Too far, man! Too far. Come back, come back. Positive 8%. Here we are. See where he is? Very important. Watch what he's doing now. He's not doing anything. Doing a good job of it too, by the way. Okay. Watch this now. All of a sudden, I'm out here too far. I'm out here for too long. I can't say how much time every manufacturer, 15%. How far? Like a Ford takes forever to do this. A Chrysler will do it in about 7 seconds. Okay. What's going to happen now is he's going to come out here and he's going to go to positive 8%. Now, this is by far the most important damn thing about this, okay? You're stabilized right now, positive 8%, right? Now, what it is, I got these little problems. I've been standing up here for 3 hours. I need to go to the bathroom, so I can't stand still. So I'm going back and forth like this, all right? Why am I doing this?
Trying to maintain.
Now, everybody, if you had a snap, you had a camera. You want to take a picture of me here, or do you want to take a picture of me here? All right, or do you want to take a picture of me here? All right, and believe me, I'm telling you, if you investigate what I'm telling you, this is how it works. It's called fuel mapping. Okay, so he's now positive 8%. All right, the second he moves, I'm right behind him. I'm 0 now. I am no longer positive. I am now in his cell. It's called a fuel cell. Okay, now watch what I can do now. I can go negative of his fuel cell. And I go positive his fuel cell. And the other point, when you want to take a snapshot of me, and you're going to sit there and tell me that you're going to deduct me from him, he is where we're at. Okay? And you can prove this yourself. Very, very simple. You can sit down. Go to a car as soon as you can, when it's idle and warmed up. Pull a vacuum hose. Everybody have a picture right now in your head of a pulse width of an injector. Okay? What's going to happen when you pull a vacuum hose, the pulse width of the injector is going to open up. All right? Now, sometimes it'll take a little while. Open a pulse width injector is him. Initially, it's me, but it becomes him now. He's taking care of the vacuum leak by adding more fuel. But you know why I'm doing this? Other than I have to go to the bathroom? I need to keep the cat working. Slightly lean, slightly rich. Slightly lean, slightly rich. I'm over here behind you because you're taking care of the problem, and I'm keeping the cat working. And what's really cool about this? I just lied to you. Okay? Prove it yourself. When you pull that injector, when you pull that vacuum hose and you see it go wider, wait probably about 10, 15 seconds, and then watch the injector, because what's going to happen is that injector is going to be power supply coming in, you're going to pull down the ground, and you're going to have your voltage spike here, right? Watch the back half with the spike with the injector. Watch the side here and watch it do this. And that's me going back and forth there. And if you don't know, what happens is the front side of your three-way cat is called a reduction section, and the back side is called the oxidation section. The front side needs slight little bits of CO, which is only being produced when it's running slightly rich. And the backside needs O2 to burn the hydrocarbon carbon monoxide. So if you don't do that, you got that #1 code in the world called a PO420. Right? So I'm reading this shit, I'm thinking, kind of weird. When I was really trying to really enhance my studies and really learn this stuff, I was reading all these people writing this stuff. I said, wow, man, these guys live. Man, these are the greatest in the world, these people. And then, luckily or unlucky for me, I got to meet every one of them. And they put one shoe on at a time, and they write what they think. I personally, I joke about it, you know, especially when I had some issues with the heart a little while ago. I start doing NACAC classes. All right. The reason why I start doing NACAC classes for free, I say you have to pay me one thing. All right. I'll do all the classes. I get all these guys to write these books in the classes, and I would say shit like I just said. And they say, well, I don't know. Okay, look, I'll tell you what, I can prove my side. Whatever you're writing in it, you try proving what you just wrote. You won't be able to prove it. All right, so I'm telling you right now that I just showed you exactly what it was. So when I sit there and tell people that when I look at a car, I don't look at a short-term fuel trim. Just like I never looked at integrator either. I don't care because this cell is where we're at. So if I'm slightly lean or slightly rich, it really makes no difference. This is where we're at, where you are. So I'm not going to subtract one for the other. I'm not going to add one to the other. I'm dealing with you. And then, you know what you can do now? How did you get it to do it? You pull the vacuum hose, right? Put the vacuum hose back on and watch what happens. I'm going to move first. Again, I'm going to move, and I'm here for so long, then you're going to move back. And when you move back, then I'm going to start this again. Until you move back, I'm stabilized. All right? That's why a lot of the manufacturers seem to just have more PO420s than other ones, because they take too long to get that thing to start going back and forth again. All right? I'm telling you, it's cool when you really start seeing the reasons for things. All right? Not just because somebody said so and so. All right? I want to go a couple of these ends here just to show you some cool stuff. Start looking at coolant temperature sensors. I talked about thermistors earlier. I hear people explain to me how a thermistor works. It's amazing. Yeah, it changes the resistance. And that's not what it does. What all thermistors do, every one of them, they measure the voltage between the fixed resistor inside the PCM and the variable resistor in there. This voltage, if you look on a scan tool, that number you're seeing the voltage is this number right here. You don't get to see it because it's in the PCM. Here's what really goes wrong. I've seen thousands and thousands of these. Here's what goes wrong. This is exposed. We start to build extra resistance in the connector. The computer looks at the voltage, so it's not looking here. If extra resistance starts to go in there, what happens is an NTC, the computer's going to think it's colder. You know what I used to say for years? Everybody said, well, isn't there another kind of PTC? I said, yep. Here's what I used to say about a PTC. If a PTC vehicle comes into your bay, get sick and go home. Because the only two cars that had them were French pieces of crap. One was a Citroen, one was a Renault. And you don't want to work them anyway. But here's what's happening now. A lot of cars are going to PTC. Common sense, they get through them at it. When you get extra resistance in NTC, the computer's going to think it's colder than it really is, right? So it's going to start adding fuel. So what happens now? Your pollutants start to rise. If they go to a PTC, extra corrosion is going to go the other way and it's going to lean it out. It's going to run like hell. Your NOx might go up, but your pollutants won't go up as much. That's why a lot of manufacturers are going to PTCs now. If you can't live without knowing the cars you work on are NTCs or PTCs, back probe the connector on the coolant temperature sensor and see if the voltage goes up or down as it's warming up. If it goes down, you got an NTC. If it goes up, you got a PTC. I don't care as long as the computer knows. But the thing you need to know is that how much authority it has. I kind of want to end something right here, and what I like to come back another time and finish a lot of this stuff. But here's something that's very, very, very important, is you have to know authority. Somebody said to me recently in an article that's coming out, here's something that I've been offered a lot of jobs from companies to teach for them. And it's just recently at KC Vision, actually, one was hounding me. I said, I can't teach for you. I said, come on, man. You can. I've been in your classes, man. I know you can teach. And I can't teach for you. And why can't you teach for me? Because a company writes all your classes. Your instructor gets up in front of people, and he turns around and looks, and he tries to figure out what the hell that is, and he's trying to teach. Every one of my classes I wrote, and I turn around and look at it, and I did it. I know exactly, so, you know, I'm comfortable. Nobody can ask me anything. You can ask anything at all, and I don't know what the hell to say because I did it, okay? And here's my point. I said to him, he said to me in an article, an interview, he said, have you ever wanted to write a class that you never wrote yet? And I said, yep. I've read almost 200 classes so far. And I said, one class I'd love to write, but I never wrote it, and I probably will never be able to write it. And this is so important to kind of end this with. I think it's really, 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 really an important sensor, okay? Here's what happens, though. The first car you go in tomorrow, all right, that might be like number 10, all right? Unbelievable, the highest. The next car you work on, that sensor might be number 7. And the name of the class, the name of the presentation I never wrote yet, I would call it, I have a name for it. It'd be called Sensor Authority. And I'm telling you, when you leave here tonight and go start your car, think about it. What does the computer have to look at until you get it started? Barometric pressure and the temperature. But you know what's going to happen when your car does start? Think of it like a bowling pins almost. The first pin, the most important one, is a coolant temperature sensor. When that car starts up, probably 3 or 4 other sensors move up equal, like the same authority. So it's kind of ironic, because I did this in a seminar one time, and I said, I'm going to take these 5 tables here, and I said, okay, what kind of car you have? What kind of car you have? What kind of car you have? When I did, I said, okay, you tell me what kind of car. Okay, 4, 7, 9. I'm telling them, we grab one sensor, whatever they wanted, and I'm telling the authority of that sensor on the hood of that car. So what I see wrong a lot of times is you really got your butt kicked by a car and that sensor was bad. Boy, you learn from that. And then you go to the next car and you're going to find that thing's got very little authority. But when you go out here tonight to try to start your car, all right, that thing is absolutely positive, 1,000%. There's nothing more important. All right, even your air temperature sensor. Air temperature sensor is only really for a hot restart. If a customer says, my car started up great, and I went and got a pack of cigarettes 4 miles down the road, I went to start it up, and I run bad almost all the time. Go look at a cool air temperature sensor. Hot restart. It's called a hot soak. All right, so you got to know what kind of authority that thing has, all right, and when does it have it. It very rarely ever stays the same authority across the board. Okay? Now, what I told you in the beginning of this thing, there's a lot more information here. And a lot of this thing is pretty self-explanatory. And my thought process, you kind of got to handle my thinking. And you look at this and write yourself down notes and stuff like that. You got my email. And we can do very simply is that you email me and I'll further explain anything. One thing I would love to come back and do, though, one class I'm very passionate about. We in this industry have been trained to look at voltage over time. When I taught for Sun, it was everything about commands. So when I start a new class with my post-secondary students, the first day I say, everybody's going to show up on time and nobody's going to go to sleep. So I give a command, right? So that's never going to happen now, right? And my point there is that we've been trained to look at commands. I look at amps. Current is the work, right? I have seen some of those beautiful waveforms in the world and a lousy running car. What it is, that command is perfect, but the current going through it isn't there or too much is there. So one thing I would like to do, everybody's dabbling with this right now. I think it justifies literally a full class by itself. To look at, I'll show you picture after picture after picture, a beautiful looking thing. Like the one job we were talking about something about a fuel-related problem. You can look at the injector all you want, and you think it's really fun. You were talking about the injector looks like the command's there. It's being told to do this, but is it really doing it or not? You know, and that's a really critical thing to look at and stuff, you know. So most times what I say, when I find what's wrong with a car, usually somebody's already looked at it. And they said, oh, this is good. And a lot of times what it is, it's a voltage reading, not a current reading. Okay? So this, you really think it through, and I apologize for this ahead of time, but nothing in this thing I say will help you unless you go and start trying this stuff. If you start looking at good cars, I'm guarantee you something. You know, I did this for a living for a long time. You guys can all show me how to put brakes on. I haven't put a set of brakes on. I haven't put a water pump on the car since 1982. I did it all before that. In 1982, I made a decision, if I'm going to perfect my skills here, I got to really work on this all the time. What I'm developing here with these kind of seminars is if you develop a pattern, you will be able to go 2 or 3 times a month and be profitable. But do me a favor, especially the shop owners, really think about create another portion of your business. It's very hard to run diagnostics at your regular part of your business, the labor rates and all that stuff, and getting the right people and stuff. You got to be bringing the money in to pay that person. And that person he's in these classes learning this kind of stuff, you know, they deserve it, you know.